Hello, everyone. Thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney in London as we discuss the next steps in personal computing. I'm wearing Quest 3. I think David has a 3S over there, and each of us has last generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking and built-in microphones, and we're live with our comments here. We're sorry we're a few minutes late there. I was reading over Don Hopper's review of Alien Rogue Incursion. So we'll have that on the site soon, but we want to get everything right on that, even though so it's taking us a little bit of time. We might have to update that as well after publication. David, what do we have today?
So today, this will be more of a recap of 2024, and we'll be looking forward into 2025 and talking about what we expect to see next year in this industry, what we think will stay the same, what will be different, and the general state of the industry at this point. Firstly, we'll have a few small topics we want to discuss. There isn't much news this week, but there are two topics. The first is a really interesting, unique Apple Vision Pro strap from a CPAP mask company, ResMed, and it looks to be perhaps the best Vision Pro strap yet that could be the solution to the comfort issues that many Vision Pro owners encounter. We'll then have another Vision Pro related news topic, which is Blackmagic Design's $30,000 Apple Immersive video camera. This was announced all the way back at WWDC. They've now opened pre-orders for it, and we'll discuss the relevance of this for the immersive video ecosystem.
I'm looking at the conversation that our commenters have had before we got in here into our studio for our listeners, and just for the recap for the new viewers out there who might be popping in. We do have live comments here that we can view on our tablets. And we've got a bunch of members out there. So I see Biggs out there. Arlen, thank you for tuning in, Arlen. And they're talking about haptics and all the different haptics that we might have in the future. That is a big area of interest to us over time. Dave, I can't even imagine. Are we going to be in this? We're going to be in this studio again in 2035 talking about haptic gloves. Is this really going to happen? Are we really on that path, David?
Yeah, we do see research at the big companies like Meta towards haptics. When we say the word haptics, we mean everything from micro points that vibrate, like you see on a B-haptic suit, all the way to resistive feedback, which is already something that you see in enterprise. These, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 gloves that are in use. The big question remains: how long is it going to take before we get those kind of gloves that can actually stop the movements of your fingers so that it feels like you're holding an object into consumer hands? Likely a long, long time, but there are several DIY projects working on it, and it still does, as far as we're aware, remain an area of research at Meta.
Yeah, so I love seeing our comments. People, let us know where you're watching us from. I love that. That's still like a common thing we see in our comments. So CJ saying they're watching us from Memphis and Columbus, Ohio, out there in Berlin. Very, very cool to see everyone. And I'd love it over time to see the setups get weirder for the people that are watching us in VR. The places that they're going inside VR while also watching us is going to be silly to watch over time. So if you happen to be in VR and multitasking, always call that out to us as well, because we'd love to hear about that. All right, you want to get into this first subject and then talk about the future?
Sure. So I'll just start with some context for anyone who doesn't have a Vision Pro, which is probably the vast majority of our viewers, or who isn't aware of what comes in the Vision Pro box. So when you open the box of your Apple Vision Pro, it comes with this thing attached, the Solo Knit Band, which uses this new 3D knitting technology that Apple developed, and it is legitimately one of the most comfortable back straps you will find in any headset. In fact, it's the most comfortable, to the point that some people buy this thing and mod it onto their Quest 3. The massive problem with it, of course, is that there's no top strap here, neither side to side nor front to back. And so very soon before Vision Pro released, Apple did a little kind of last minute addition and put in an alternative strap in the box, the dual loop band, which does have a side to side top strap. But the back strap is this sort of thinner and less comfortable strap. So you kind of trade off the comfort at the back of your head to have better support from the top of your head. Of course, the recent context is that last month, Belkin started selling a best of both worlds solution, a side-to-side top strap for the Solo knit band. And for now, this is kind of considered the ideal way to have comfort on Vision Pro if you don't want something against your forehead and you do want to be able to lean back, because there are, AnaPro straps that solve this in different ways. The Belkin strap is sold directly on Apple's website, and I think you can get it even in some Apple stores. So it's kind of it's a third-party solution, but it's de facto first-party in that sense. Now, one problem that you still will have with this, well, there's two problems. The first is that it still doesn't provide a counterweight. If you have something like a Pico 4 Ultra or Quest Pro, the battery in the rear is actually providing both, a battery and a counterbalance for the weight of the front of the headset. So this doesn't do that. The other problem is there are certain hairstyles that it doesn't really support. If you look at your Quest 3's default strap, there's space here. It's not all material. And that means you can support, ponytails, for example. So that brings us to this new strap from ResMed, which is a CPAP mask company. And it's a really kind of unique design that I don't think we've seen before, where you have three straps. You have a kind of all the way back at the bottom of your head, one at the top of the back of your head, and then one that's almost like at the forehead. And there are a couple of unique things about this. The first is that they say it's crafted with a blend of ultra premium materials that are gentle on skin and exclusive to ResMed, so proprietary materials. And they say that because when they're making these CPAP masks, they actually have thousands of 3D face scans of in people's entire head scans. They've actually used that same data to figure out what would actually be comfortable. And what's really unique about this is that these little things here are modular attachable counterweights, and there are 6 of them in total. So they attach via Velcro to different parts of the strap. In this image, you can see them not attached. So you can see like the point here. So you could just use this as a strap that kind of gives you similar benefits to having a side-to-side top strap and a comfortable rear strap, or you can also attach those points and get a counterbalance. So when you consider that this sort of supports hairstyles like ponytails, in theory at least, it offers a counterbalance, and it's made of these kind of apparent, according to them, proprietary, comfortable materials. This could be the ideal solution yet for Vision Pro comfort. The price, for those wondering in the comments, is $120.
I was looking for James O'Loughlin in the comments because I know he's got many, many thoughts about this entire, all the different straps out there. And sure enough, there he was making his comment on the Belkin strap, and Solo knit is his preference. Can wear it all day. It says the dual loop strap is comfortable enough for me too, but more fussy to take off and on versus the Solo knit band. I don't know. The comment that there's a lot of things to get into here, right? This is such a different design, and I like David, everyone out there pointing out like it's new and interesting, and the things that it makes them think of. Right? People don't want to be thinking about CPAP machines as a cool on the coolness factor in association with VR, number one. But also the other thing I thought that I saw people bring up with the little attachment weights and the way this straps on was the similarity this has to some of the brain interface straps. I think it got some people out there, at least it got me thinking about the potential path to straps that do more of this, and then you attach sensors along the outside for various purposes.
Yeah, it's something that several companies are working on. Valve was definitely working on this for a while. There was a partner company that was working there. They had like this attachment, this custom strap for the Valve Index that had these EEG attachments for BCI input. I think they've now moved on to working with Vario headsets. But whether we'll see anything like that in the consumer space, I don't have any indication. We don't have any company that's indicated that they want to bring that to a consumer sense, but it would certainly be an interesting way, because then you can not only provide a counterbalance, but actually have that weight doing something useful in this case, while still letting you lean back, because that is, again, all of these straps are trying to keep delivering the positive of Vision Pro strap design and Quest 3's default strap design, which you don't get in a Pico 4 Ultra, and you don't get in the Samsung headset that we discussed last week. The ability to lie back on a couch, on a comfy chair, on a bed even, and have this giant virtual screen in front of you, whether that be to watch movies, or you have Steam Link up to play the games on your PC, or even just native games that are on the App Store. You lose that when you have anything that's too thick at the back of your head, and even on a plane as well, right? I've tried this before. I've tried using Elite style straps for Quest. It just sucks when you kind of bash that plastic into the back of the seat and it shifts the headset on your head.
Well, yeah, so that brings me to sort of a derailing thought I wanted to offer for our audience that I've been pondering for a little bit, but I think of sleep masks and how light they are. They're this little bit of fabric that you wear over your face. You wear them on planes to go to sleep, and like the I'm sure people do go to sleep inside their VR headsets inside planes while they're watching a long movie over an 8-hour flight, how relaxed and focused you can get. And I think about Big Screen Beyond, right? Do you remember what the uh, weight target there is of the Big Screen Beyond? It's like what?
127 grams, I believe.
Yeah, so under 150 grams, so 100, and they shave off. They have like a mantra of shaving every single gram. Every gram matters is the way they try to shave off all of that weight. And there's still a difference. This is my big idea I want us to think about going to the future. There's still a giant difference between 127 grams and the 5 grams or something that sleep mask is going to be on my face. And 100% people are going to want to use VR headsets while they're going to sleep, while they're falling asleep. It's going to be a common usage over time, I think, especially when you've got I don't know. When these things start eating more displays, we've talked about how they replace iPads right now, but you and I have talked for years at this point, David, about the idea that headsets will rearrange living rooms and rearrange whole houses as people start making all of their personal, like maybe you don't have a living room TV, maybe you just have VR headsets eventually, right?
Yeah, and a key aspect of that, as you say, is when do they get light enough and comfortable enough that that matters for that gets to the point that you're comfortable with it, right? Because today, for the vast majority of people, they don't want to wear this thing because it's just too heavy. I think with all of these third-party straps that are being sold through Apple, again, this one is also on the apple.com website being sold. Apple is going to be using these internally in testing and deciding what kind of strap do we ship with Vision Pro 2. I can't imagine them going with the same old strap design if it's anywhere near as heavy. If they have, shaved off hundreds of grams, maybe okay. But if they still have a 600-gram headset, and I'm just talking about the front box, they're not going to ship the same old strap over again, or at least it would be a catastrophic mistake. And you can see that they know that because a couple of months after Vision Pro launched, they stopped using the solo knit band in its store demos. They literally stopped using it and they started using the dual loop band instead. I wonder, in the lifetime of Vision Pro, will they start using one of these? Will they start using Belkin's strap that James O'Loughlin in the comments is using? We'll have to see.
I love LL's comment. I want to talk about that one here in a second. Going down my joke of associating with a CPAP machine and how people might not want that association. But they're saying who will be the first move to market with a chin strap. I like that. Honestly, it makes me think about what the Void had. The Void had like a helmet design, and they even had a lot of padding so that you could bump around in the dark. Kind of like almost felt like a bicycle helmet. So that yeah, if you bumped around while going through Ghostbusters years ago with a backpack PC, you would still feel pretty comfortable. And yeah, I like the chin strap machine or the chin strap being added. I saw some others. I wanted to mention all the locations. I saw people commenting from a lot of people in New York, a lot of people in New Jersey. Saw some other people elsewhere. I saw Biggs saying that normally they're in California, but they're in Texas today. So thank you for tuning in, Biggs, and everyone else. Hit that like button. We've got the our first of best of video that we just put up just a few minutes long, me and Don here in the studio talking about some of our favorite games, why we picked them on the specific platforms. We've got a longer conversation we're planning to put up today that will go over the best mixed reality and hand tracking games. David, I'm excited when we talk about the future. You and I need to talk a little bit about those becoming their own categories today. And what that means for hardware next year. Anything you want to talk about here before we move on?
I guess when we talk about falling asleep in headsets, we should just, have you fallen asleep in a headset? I have. I can remember the first time I did. It was with the original Oculus Rift CV1 in 2016. And I was using it all day. And I was in big screen, actually, the app, in the city environment where you're in at nighttime and you're looking over the city. And I had aligned it so that the virtual bed was perfectly aligned with my real
Oh,
bed. And I lay down and I was watching something and I woke up a few hours later, still in
it,
that environment. And that's
it's
a
funny.
headset that, sorry, just one thing.
Just,
That headset is still more comfortable than almost every other headset after it. That had a really good weight distribution. They, as Palmer Luckey said at the time, they designed that thing like a high end race car with this same mentality of every gram matters. And I think the actual front box of the Rift CV1 was like around 370 grams or something like that. Don't quote me on that. It's been years and years since that headset came out. But the point is, it's remarkably lighter than almost every headset that's come since. And that was
it's
with
fun.
Fresnel lenses,
I hope you've just caused a trend over in our comments of people sharing their stories of falling asleep in VR headsets because I would love to see those stories. And the thing I love you sharing that story, David, because I've gotten close to falling asleep, but I almost always, as far as I can remember, I always bring the headset off and then go and actually find myself in bed. But there have been times very recently, even where I take the Vision Pro or the Quest 3S to bed. I've used the Quest 3 in bed with the IR illuminator. And I did 3D modeling with Figment XR for like an hour in bed the other night. But I'm like getting sleepy and I'm watching a movie. I take the headset off, put it in a bag because I don't know. I just haven't been able to manage falling asleep. And also I flip from side to side and the big bulky headset on the front doesn't work well that way. But yeah, I do also, I love the stories of falling asleep in VR. One story I always like bringing up, I think it was Devin Reamer and one of the other early Alchemy Labs co-creators of the early Job Simulator games. I believe they shared a story similar to David's where the power went out as they were working in the basement on some game, and they took the headset off their head, and because the headset is black now, right? It's getting power from the PC. They see nothing inside the headset. They pull the headset off their head and they're still immersed in darkness. Nothing has changed. They've pulled the headset off because they were working in a basement with basement lighting and the power went out in the whole building. So that was, I love that the image of being freaked out, and you pull the headset off your head once, you see darkness, and maybe you reach up and pull the headset, try to pull a headset off again because of that situation. Do we have people sharing those stories, David?
Yeah, we have multiple people actually saying that they fell asleep in Elite Dangerous. Onakazi saying that they fell asleep in Elite. E-Pilot 007, 007, I should probably say, saying, I fell asleep in Elite Dangerous and woke up to an amazing sunrise in an asteroid belt. Just wow.
Wow, I love that. That's beautiful. Can you imagine you've got like a haptic floor that wakes you up when you roll into like a specific solar system? Like I'm just gonna snooze back in my long haul truck. You go lay down on the little trucking bed that you've built on the back of your long haul spaceship and you go sleep for a couple hours. You come back to your chair and you fall asleep dozing off, and then all your alarm systems wake up as you're finally getting to your location. But the thing that's always missing with that sort of setup is if you have the floor as a little bit of vibration, your chair does vibration. That haptic effect when you do that sort of thing would be so amazing to feel yourself rolling into something in your ship, even though you're asleep. Oh, wow, that would be an amazing effect to have added to that. I love your story out there in the comments. What a wonderful story. All right, what do we got, David? What do we got next? Do you want to keep going over these stories? Because I love this.
I'm now just kind of wondering, would we ever get to a headset that you could legitimately sleep in and not really mind? Would we ever, we're talking on the scale of decades here, get to something that actually does approach a sleep mask? And again, the scale of decades, something that has like, flexible electronics, holographic optics, solid state batteries, something that is to today would feel like almost like a magical artifact, like something an alien would produce. But if there's a lot of technology today that is so compact and packs so much computing power that if you were to show someone a few decades ago, they might have the same reaction, right? A modern smartphone, if you showed someone in the 1970s or 80s, would seem completely magic. They would struggle to understand how it was made. AirPods, the Apple Watch, people would struggle to comprehend that those things are possible in such a small form factor. Could even the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, right? What they do in a glasses frame a couple of decades ago. So maybe one day we will actually get headsets that are so light that you literally wear them to sleep and they act as sleeping masks. But again, decades.
Well, all right. So I love the comments. Everyone is really feeling it at the end of this year. We don't have a whole lot to discuss today, so it's fun to discuss this, go on this tangent with you. And oh man, it's been such a year, David. We're going to discuss that very soon. But I went to a New York VR meetup when I first got to New York, and there was this guy there. I wish I could remember his name offhand, but he was, I believe he was hosting. I can't remember the drug, but he was hosting therapy sessions with some sort of drug. And I was curious about them. I was gonna attend one to see what it looked like if I could. But I didn't follow up on all that. But one of the things he had at this New York meetup was you closed your eyes and it would flash lights onto your eyelids while your eyes are closed. And based on the frequency of the flashing, you would end up having different imagery that would like you would see on the inside of your eyelids reproduced through the eyelid, which I think I've seen a couple experimental things at SeaGraph that are a similar sort of idea of actually messaging you through your eyelids. All right, so I just wanted to give that fodder out there for the crazy ideas that are growing in people's heads. I also love the one commenter saying that they fell asleep watching one of our shows. I love that idea. We could talk more like NPR, David. We could get them really relaxed out there on their Sunday morning and yeah, sweaty. I'm sorry, it's the Christmas thing. I'm thinking of sweaty balls. All right.
We'll take that as a compliment, I guess.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Sorry. Hello, Mindweaver. Thank you for becoming a member recently. And thank you to all of our members out there. What is it? Arlen, to saying Neil deGrasse Tyson famously once said that if you bought an iPhone back to the early 1900s, they would resurrect the witch burning laws. Yeah, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Are both comments that I think about quite a lot. I feel like they're truisms that have been useful to think about in our day.
Yeah, I mean, it's really exciting to think about where this technology will be decades from now. The potential for very small form factors and very high quality. If you took a laptop from the early 90s, like these really thick things with these low resolution TFT displays, and then you put it side by side with like a modern MacBook Air, people would look at this unibody aluminium frame that somehow has all of this, 20 hours of battery life and incredible processing power, and they would wonder if you were tricking them somehow. If you brought it back to the 90s, they would say, where's the computing hardware? There's just this kind of little, centimeter and a half thick aluminium keyboard. Where's all the computing hardware? What's the magic here? So it'd be very interesting to see what's the equivalent to like a VR headset in the 2040s.
Interesting random question here asking about the lack of an affordable PC with DisplayPort or affordable PC VR with DisplayPort. Yeah, what do you think of that, David? That people have been like asking for this interface, like that they're so focused on the interfaces of the VR headsets.
Well,
what should they think about there?
Sure, I think what the commenter is asking about is PC VR with lossless display. Whereas if you're using either USB or Wi-Fi for your Quest or your Pico or your Vive standalone, except for their newest one, which is $1,000 anyway, you have this compressed image which adds latency, and then you also get compression artifacts in most cases. unless you're using like the highest bit rate with the newest cards. I think the answer is that there actually is right now an affordable PC VR headset with DisplayPort lossless image. It's PlayStation VR 2. For the rest of the year, for the rest of the month, I should say at this point, it is $350 plus the adapter, unless you have a card with a USB port, which most people don't. So you're talking total cost $410, which is pretty much slap bang between a Quest 3S and a Quest 3. So, I mean, there is a PlayStation VR 2 is the headset you're looking for if you want lossless PC VR and you don't want to spend $1,000. It exists. It has trade-offs. It has its own trade-offs. The eye box is not wide, so you got to make sure that lens is very perfectly positioned on your face. That you may want to add like a better facial interface instead of that kind of flimsy silicone one that it's built with. You're going to see some Mura on the display. It has that trade-off that some OLED displays have, where you get this kind of noisy image, and it's kind of soft because it's a pentile display that they've used the lenses to blur the subpixels a little bit. All that said, it still has a really great field of view. It gives you, punchy colors, contrast. It's designed for Steam VR. The driver, at least, is designed for Steam VR. So I guess, PlayStation VR 2 is the headset that you're describing.
So I love multiple people in the comments are comparing us to the NPR of XR, and I appreciate that. That is a good vibe to associate ourselves with. I love NPR, and I love the vibe of their audio and everything they do. A lot of, Radiolab, some really incredible work over there on Radiolab. And I've seen a couple people mention the Windows 11 V72 Windows 11 remote desktop feature in our comments. Some of us are watching us using that feature. And when we get to the future of 2025, I want to focus. I want to bring that up and talk about that feature more. Sure. What do we want to talk about now, right now?
Sure. Let's go. Well, first I want to say that I've seen a lot of people responding very positively to that. It's still a beta, but for me at least, it works excellently. We talked about it last week, and we will definitely discuss it more in the show. That is an example of these partnerships that you always discuss, Ian, with these giants coming together to make something work well. Microsoft and Meta making sure that using your PC with your Quest is as easy as possible. But yeah, let's just cover the other piece of this week news before we get into that wider discussion, and that is this $30,000 camera. So pre-orders are open now. I'm sure everyone in the comments will be clamoring to get one as at such a low and affordable price. But to be clear, this is not really for individuals. Now, if you are a individual professional, movie maker, or, I should say, documentary short film maker, maybe you would want to pick up one of these things. But realistically, what this is for professional productions. This is a ridiculously high-end camera. And what this does, why this is significant, is that it will allow any production studio to film, I should say, Apple immersive video content. All of the content you see so far, be it that submerged short film, the Weeknd's music video that we've talked about, all of that is through a direct contract with Apple, where Apple is like lending you out these custom Apple cameras, which emerged from their Next VR acquisition, and then the studio builds something and then they bring it back. Now imagine if everything on Netflix had to be filmed by Netflix, like renting out special Netflix cameras to someone, or even, imagine a wider version of that analogy where every content on YouTube, you had to make a partnership with YouTube and go and rent some cameras. You would never get the kind of content ecosystem that we have for regular video on the internet today. So this is a hugely important step. It means that production studios can just go out and buy this thing and start filming. And so we expect that this will really dramatically increase the amount of Apple immersive video content. Here is a picture of this thing on a drone, which is you see in a lot of the current Apple TV, Apple immersive video content for these kind of panning wide shots of nature. So just to talk about specs here, this is one of the most ridiculously spec'd devices I've ever read about. This thing shoots 8K per eye, not 8K like, Pimax used to call their headset 8K that was 4K per eye, or I guess Shiftall are doing that now. This is genuinely 8,000 by 7,000 roughly per lens. So that is And that's at 90 frames per second because the Apple Immersive Video content is at 90 frames per second to make it feel smooth and match the display refresh rate. So that means there are over 5 billion pixels captured every second, 5 gigapixels per second by this device at 90 frames per second. And even more impressive is its dynamic range. So this thing has 16 stops of dynamic range, and anyone in the comments who's familiar with videography will realize how ridiculous that is. The best Hollywood cameras in the world have 17 stops. So this is only one off that. That means that this can capture in the same scene incredible brightness and incredible darkness. And that's obviously being captured with high dynamic range so that when you view that in the Vision Pro with its HDR micro OLED displays, you're seeing that fullness. And Ian has discussed in his review of that Submerged short film how vital that was to pulling off the feeling of being, trapped in a submarine. And there are many other scenarios in which you really need that because when you just like pass through video, whether it be on your Quest 3 or your Vision Pro, where you're looking around at the real world, shows every little flaw in the camera, right? Every little flaw in the camera you see because it's magnified across your field of view and you're seeing it at that scale. That applies to immersive video because this is a 180-degree video covering the full frontal region of your field of view. And so any imperfections in that camera capture process will take you out of it and make you feel not immersed. So it's crucial that now a production can buy a really, really high quality camera, film ridiculously high bit rate, ridiculously high resolution, ridiculously high dynamic range content, and then that will proliferate to Vision Pro owners, and I'm sure to Quest as well.
I'm gonna wake up in the middle of the night and just go film. I'm gonna start screaming to myself, film. All right. So David, I have to go off on a tangent here and bring up War of the Worlds. Everyone remember the little camera that comes down to look at Tom Cruise and his family underneath the house, and the big giant lens eyeball that's coming through the building at him, and that drone video you showed, or the drone shot of this strapped to a drone. When we talk about computer vision, when we talk about these headsets having perception and understanding where they are in an environment, and I see this flying creature with a pair of eyeballs on the bottom, like a flying dragon, it brings it home for me. Just when you actually give the pixel count of how many things per second this thing is analyzing, we're still talking about all the same darn stuff, right? Like the goal here is to get cameras that capture more of your environment at higher resolutions, at higher frame rates, with more dynamic range, and to give you enough data when you get all of those images so that if there is a single imperfection anywhere in this image, and this is the thing that kills me, David, like I've had 3 or 4 of these 360 or 180 degree cameras at this point, and if there's a single speck of dust on a single lens anywhere, the entire shot is unusable. So I can't even imagine the kind of post-processing effort that's needed to get these eyeballs from not having dust on them.
Oh yeah, and that kind of segues us well onto the other aspect of this news, which is that DaVinci Resolve Studio, the video editing software that this same company, Blackmagic Design, makes. I'm sure any videographers and video editors in the comments will be familiar with DaVinci Resolve. It is getting support for editing Apple Immersive Video from this camera in Q1 of next year, so sometime in the next few months. So they say that when you kind of combine these two aspects, this camera that makes it possible to film at the quality that Apple Immersive Video requires, plus editing software that allows you to edit it, that you now have a publicly available end-to-end pipeline for the production of Apple Immersive Video, which is something we haven't had before. So yeah, I'm sure there will be a lot of post-production done there. One really interesting aspect of this is they haven't gone into detail, but they say they will support live preview on Vision Pro. Maybe, there's a Vision Pro app that connects to the PC software and kind of streams the preview. So it'll be interesting to see how that looks.
Yeah, it's going to be wild. We aren't there yet, but going back years, I talked to Jon Favreau at one point. I can't remember what movie he was working on at the time, but he did talk about virtual production, and he was very knowledgeable even back then about the HTC Vive and its offering. And They, of course, had the Gnomes and Goblins PC-based experience that had a little creature in it that looks just like Grogu, the baby Yoda character. Uh, there's a line there of the creatures in Gnomes and Goblins in VR to what became Star Wars's Baby Grogu, and it was amazing to hear from Jon Favreau his even back then how important VR was for on-set visualizing of shots before you even make them. But there is still a long way to go to make that particular process a lot easier. Like if you can be in headset and be immersed 180 degrees in your live shot while also like having your timeline up here, that would be a game changer.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Jean Favreau used that in The Lion King, where these are entirely CGI movies, where he was literally designing the shots and angles from within a real-time rendered version of the movie set in Unreal Engine 5. We're really starting to see the adoption of VR, both for production of regular content and for production of immersive content across the industry. And last week we talked about James Cameron's partnership with Meta, which some of the commenters are bringing up here. Um, I think this is one of those things that, like, all of this has been around for a long time now. When you got your Samsung Gear VR Experimental Edition in 2014, this kind of 180-degree content was all that it was focused on, pretty much, and 360 content as well. It's been around for a long time. It's not new, but what is new is that it's not shit anymore. Sorry to be so blunt about it, but the quality is really good now. You don't put it on and say, oh, it's kind of cool, but it's so blocky and choppy because the frame rate's low and the bit rate's low, and it looks kind of limited because the dynamic range is small. I was genuinely anti 180 degree and 360 video until I tried Apple Immersive Video on the Vision Pro. But because until then I was like, this is cool in theory, but the quality just isn't there to the point where you're not constantly seeing all the imperfections. And then Apple finally, I've said this before on this show, but Apple finally came along and said, no, the problem with this isn't the idea, it's the implementation. Everyone's been cheaping out on bit rate, on resolution, on dynamic range, on frame rate. Here's what this looks like if you just go all in and do the real hard engineering work to make this look incredible. And you try Apple Immersive Video and you're like, wow, they've actually done it. This is going to be an entire content category. And it really is at the point where I think once you get these things in sports stadiums, right? Once you get to the future, which I don't think is that far off, I'm talking 3 to 5 years, where every major sporting event has a couple of seats around the stadium booked out for these things to sit in instead of a human being. And then that is eventually live streamed out to Apple Vision, Android XR, Meta Horizon OS. Once that happens, you will start seeing headsets sold for this specific use case, not just for the use cases that we see headsets used for today.
Yeah, what a wonderful transition to the future here, beginning as we kind of get to that part of the discussion. David's looking at the comments there. I'm sure he's going to find interesting things to bring up there. I saw the 24 frames per second going away from movies. I went and saw, I remember it was, I made a booking to go see one of the Hobbit movies in high frame rate in the theater. There was one theater that had it, just a few across the United States that you could go see this movie with double the frame rate, and all the fakeness of the sets came across because of the extra frames. You could see that the plasticness of the plants and the CGI didn't look as right. It had this wrong feel to it, and we're in that phase of switchover where every pixel does count from the moment that photon goes into the camera to the moment it hits your eyeballs again. It really, really matters. And I loved you talking about having a seat, right? A virtual front row seat. Like, season tickets to major sporting events is a major enterprise, but they're also too expensive for most people. What if you could get season tickets that are courtside, but don't take up, what is the class of ticket where you can go courtside at your favorite NBA game or your favorite sporting event? You sit there the entire season. How much does that cost you to sit in these types of seats?
Yeah, I mean, we should just point out that right now, for 52 games per season for free, Quest headset owners in the US can go to 52 NBA games. The difference there is that it's not a 3D camera like this. It is 180 degrees, but it's not anywhere near this quality. It's only one of these lenses and a lot lower resolution and a lot lower dynamic range. And so Meta is today providing that old kind of immersive video where it just doesn't pass the quality bar for me. There are some people, I must point out, that come along and tell me, I really love doing this on my Quest headset. I watch all 52 games. It's good enough for me. And if that's you, all power to you. I'm happy for you, but I don't think for most people it does follow that. When it comes to this frame rate discussion, I do think that's really interesting because some people imagine that that the idea here is that you take the same sort of movies we have today and just present them in immersive 180 degrees, and that's not going to happen. It is what becomes very clear from watching that first short film that Apple produced, Submerged, is that this is an entirely new medium that has to be thought about differently. It's not like it really is as significant as going from theater plays to movies, and in fact, I think it's actually more similar than theater. I think it would be much better for these companies to go and get some people that are very used to putting on theater productions to try and film this kind of content in movies, because the kind of rapid changes of shot and careful close framing that makes cinema what it is, right? The language of cinema is based on these things that just don't translate through to being able to see the entire scene 180 degrees and having a sort of stationary fixed shot. I think this is much more like theater, ironically, than cinema.
Definitely agree with that. And there's very interesting things to think about for the future of just what people want to see remotely and what people want to attend live and the cost of those things. I went to a Sleep No More showing here in New York. This is an immersive theater production that takes place across multiple floors of a building, and you go up and down stairs following a story that you have to physically walk and follow the actors and actresses as they go through this kind of quiet story all around you in the darkness. Fascinating experience, and it's the similar sort of evolution of theater. Like it's at the complete opposite physical end of the spectrum here, but there's still a similarity here to where we go here. I see the multiple commenters talking about the idea that you could maybe get a business up and going, renting these out, which is a very good idea. And someone was joking that we could have a GoFundMe to get a couple of these for the camera. I have no interest in going out and filming with these, but it's fun to imagine some of the ideas, like I don't know, a Renaissance fair was what came to mind as I was imagining having eyes into a Renaissance fair and getting to see, like, being courtside as you see the different knights duke it out on the big court. You could have this camera out there and feel like you're at the Ren Fair, even though you're not at the Ren Fair.
Quentin in the comments saying, I've said it before and I'll say it again, Broadway needs to adopt VR seats. Broadway is really hurting right now and would benefit from more VR seats sold. That's a great point, that you could, instead of saying, oh, this needs to be a medium that's thought about like plays, you could literally just take current productions and have one of these things in a front row seat, or elevate it a bit to make it easier to see and start selling that. Another interesting question we have from a commenter here, Bringhurst, is there any chance of getting the Apple content on the Quest 3 down the line? That's an interesting one, because in recent years, we've seen Apple bring its services to Android and other platforms, right? You can get Apple Music on your Android phone and Apple TV on your Android TV, which is something that 5 or 10 years ago, I don't think anyone would have expected. But Apple right now is seeing services as one of its biggest growing sectors. But that's after these things being mature for a very, very long time. Right now, the Apple immersive video content on Vision Pro is free. It's not even being charged for through the Apple TV Plus subscription. It's essentially like a marketing expense for a reason to go buy a Vision headset. And I think that's going to be the case for a long, long time. You would need to see the immersive video content start being gated behind a payment. Although, of course, there is the model where it could be, this is free for Vision Pro owners, and if you're a Quest or Android XR owner, pay us $10 a month or whatever Apple TV Plus is now to access this. So Apple is very different today from what it was 5 or 10 years ago, and we'll have to see Does that happen in 5 or 10 years?
So I don't know if this is, I guess, spoiler alert for the new Indiana Jones game that just came out. I got that installed. So there's a lot of things I want to discuss here because I love where everyone is going in the discussion. I saw Minx talking about immersive productions in VR and getting informed about the idea that that is a thing. And I want to talk about a bunch of those because there's so many cool things happening with acting in VR. Um, and okay, so James is saying no spoilers on that. Okay, my spoilers then here have to do with the tutorial. Okay, the very first few minutes of Indiana Jones, the new game, it's like a recreation of Raiders of the Lost Ark to tutorialize the game. You're taught the very first moves in this game set against the backdrop of it. But what that means is it's also a play space. This whole opening scene of the movie of the game is a play space for this company, this developer to show off their rendering technology for a recreation of Harrison Ford in a video game world. So you're looking up there and you're seeing these scenes from a movie that are burned into your brain from childhood. You've seen these faces on Harrison Ford's. You know what faces he made very specifically in your brain back in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then you see it, this rendered version of it up on the screen in this game. And it's a wildly impressive thing towards I don't know, actor capture or actor recreation. None of it's, it's all these constraints, right? It's not real time in a lot of these instances. It's all but it's still wildly impressive, this whole way it's done. And that's so I want to bring all of that up, and then I want to bring up Minx's comment. So I have tickets tomorrow night, actually, to A Christmas Carol in VR. And this is A Christmas Carol produced by Alex Klum, who wrote the article for us about going hands on with the Orion glasses. And he produces this every year using state of the art tech, new technology every year, where he's got capture rigs on actors. He's streaming from those capture rigs to PC systems and collating all that data, setting it up inside a story like he's doing. You know how there's a Christmas Carol in every major city in the world around Christmas time. This is the VR rendition of it using the very best avatar technology they can manage in VR right now. So I'm going to go to the latest rendition of what he's able to do this year. I went to a couple of these productions in the past, and it was bug city. Like there was just, it was tremendous. I felt terrible for this actor who must have been sitting in VR in this capture rig, and they're like trying to ad lib their way through their rig not working, right? Like, and it's horribly awkward to hear an 1800s Dickens type character trying to explain why their ghostly voice is calling from the ether and stuff like that. So I just wanted to give that little aside, and just that I'm just barely scratching the surface of what actors are doing in VR in various ways, and it's really really cool. Go find those acting troops; they're already out there.
Sure. I think we're ready to move on to our discussion of 2024 and 2025, a recap of this year and what we expect to see change and happen next year. So I'm not sure how you want to do this, Ian, but I kind of have 5 significant hardware releases this year I think are important, and then 3 industry things. Do you want me to run down those first and discuss them? Sure. So there are 5 hardware releases that really significantly matter this year. The first one, as I'm sure you're all going to guess, is the release of Quest 3S. So with Quest 3S, we saw the price of entry for mixed reality decrease to just $300, as well as the price for higher quality VR that has that XR2 Gen 2. So that's a significant moment, where before this release it was $500 minimum, and now for $300 people can get that. And we expect that many people are going to be picking that up right now for gifts around Christmas. We'll be really curious to talk to developers about what activation numbers they see on December 25th in terms of new users and throughout the holidays in general. It also brought the ability to use hand tracking in the dark to a Meta headset for the first time with those IR emitters, and we expect that that's going to be a fundamental feature of all Meta headsets going forward. So that's kind of the one weird way in which it's actually better than its higher end cousin, Quest 3 brother, I guess I should say, sibling. So now we have this lineup. So that's arguably one of the most significant hardware releases of the year. The others, we point out, there are other releases that are just as significant. The release of Pico 4 Ultra. If you're an American, you probably don't care about Pico 4 Ultra because it's not sold in your country, just like the predecessor wasn't sold as well. But in Europe and in the Asian countries it's available, it matters because it offers the only real direct Quest 3 competitor. And that does have even if it has a small effect on Meta, that still matters. We don't want to be in a market where the only standalone headset that's less than $1,000 is from one company, Meta. With this Pico 4 Ultra, we exist in a world where if you're in one of the countries this is sold and you just don't want to buy a Meta product, there is an alternative, and that is a good world to be in. Even though, of course, if you are someone that has a huge problem with the Meta for privacy reasons, buying a product from ByteDance is probably not going to be your ideal solution, given that if you're not aware, ByteDance is the company that owns TikTok. That wouldn't make a huge amount of sense, but it's still good for it to have competition. One of the aspects that really matters of Pico 4 Ultra, of course, is its motion trackers, that you can get a standalone headset, strap these things to your legs, and jump into VR chat and have tracked legs, something that Meta has said it simply does not want to do. Another important hardware
The commenters are cracking me up. The LL says the rest of your list is the Deca Gear, the Mega Gain X, and the Lynx R1. And then I just wanted to mention TMS's comment where they're hashtagging never Meta as you're mentioning the alternative to Meta. So all right, so go on, David. I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Sure,
hello, Gigo, and thank you for tuning in.
It's okay. Well, like I said, we'll run through these and then we'll discuss them. So we've had Quest 3S so far and Pico 4 Ultra, lower cost mixed reality and high quality VR, and a real competitor to Quest 3. The next significant hardware release we saw this year is Logitech MX Ink. And this delivers a completely new kind of input for spatial art. No longer do you have to kind of clumsily figure out how you can get a VR controller designed for gaming to work for 3D creation and art. You now have this dedicated device that has excellent tracking quality, just as good as a Touch Plus controller, has the form factor you want, has pressure sensitivity for drawing on 2D surfaces. I've heard some really positive things about this device from 3D artists who have been in this space for years, who have been using VR controllers and dreaming about having a stylus. And sure, there was another Logitech stylus years ago for Steam VR tracking, but it was like, I think $600 or $800 and clunky. Now the fact that you can pick this thing up for, I think it's $120 and pair it to a Quest 3S or a Quest 2 or a Quest 3, that's a complete game changer for the spatial art community in general. I guess the other significant hardware release we have this year is the PlayStation VR 2 PC adapter. So with this thing, Sony turned what was a console VR headset into a really great PC VR headset. Earlier in the show, I discussed how it delivers on that promise that people want of an affordable native DisplayPort, lossless image for PC VR. If you want, to have a simulator setup of some sort, and you just want a headset that is affordable and doesn't have to deal with the issues of compression and using kind of software to transfer across USB or Wi-Fi, you just want something that works. Assuming you have a Bluetooth adapter that's supported, this is that headset. And if you're someone who detests LCD and wants OLED, this is also that headset for you. So that's a significant moment of Sony kind of being realistically the only sub $500 competition to Meta for PC VR, right? There is no, since the removal of the Windows MR headsets from the market and Windows 11 literally killing support for Windows MR headsets. This is that headset, right? This PSVR 2 on PC is that headset. The only real competition you have at this kind of price point is Meta. And as we said, for the rest of the year, this thing is still $350. So if you add the adapter price of $60 for around $410 plus whatever cables you might need, because it doesn't come with certain cables, you can get that PC VR setup. So
before you got one more on your list, before we move on to the last one, I want to say something. So go ahead.
Sure. Like I said, we'll just run through them really, really quickly. Now, there is one more piece of hardware that released this year, and I would argue is the most significant of all. This hardware is not going to be something that most people can afford. It's not something that is within the vast majority of people's ability to access. It has its issues, but in the history of technology books, there is only one piece of hardware we're going to discuss today that's going to get its entire chapter, while the rest, I think, maybe would get a sentence at most. And I'm sure some of the commenters are guessing where I'm going by now. That is Apple Vision Pro. This headset has introduced a number of firsts that make it deeply significant. And I think a lot of what this headset introduced is going to be copied and adopted across the industry. And some of the things that this did first will become so standard on headsets that people in 10 years from now won't even be able to imagine headsets that didn't work like this. So it's the first headset with ultra high resolution micro OLED displays, which makes it the first truly suited to turn physical screens into software. It's not that it's the only one that can, it's the first one that has high enough resolution to make it genuinely compelling. And that means it can become that giant 4K HDR cinema for both 2D and 3D movies. It can conjure whatever productivity setup you want, no matter where you are. Turning now your little 13-inch MacBook into a giant ultra-wide display wherever you need it. Its operating system is just as significant. Vision OS goes far beyond any Android fork, even Android XR, and any PC VR runtime from a major player so far, introducing this concept of a shared space where as many windows as you want can run alongside multiple 3D volumetric apps, and others can join you as a realistic spatial persona, seeing what you see, interacting with it in a shared coordinate space. Vision OS is still far beyond anything we've seen from any other major player. The other thing, of course, is the combination of hardware and software, leveraging the headset's eye tracking for a gaze and pinch interaction system that the rest of the industry is set to follow. And I will say it right here on the record, this is going to become the standard default interaction system across the industry. Google and Samsung have already adopted it for Android XR. Meta plans it for its ultralight 2027 headset, that Puffin codenamed headset that will have the tethered compute pack. It's going to be gaze and pinch. Look with your eyes, pinch with your fingers. Immersed uses it, and more. There are so many companies that we understand are going to enter this industry that will use this interaction system. So yes, it's a $3,500 product. It's for early adopters. It's heavy. It has its issues. It doesn't have controllers. It doesn't play games. But its impact on the industry and the future that it proves out by showing that you can, with the right resolution and the right specs, do these use cases really compelling on the headset, mean that this is the most significant release for this year.
Ooh, what a wonderful list, David. I love the last few ones on his list. The PSVR 2 adapter going to PC. And Apple Vision Pro. There's so many things to think about here. I think we've got a big discussion ahead of us over the course of the show. We're at an hour into the show with more than 100 people watching. Thank you to everyone for tuning in with us and being regular viewers, the silent viewers out there, people who occasionally pipe up. We love hearing from all of you, and I think we've got a bit more time today with you and our audience, as well as so just give us any questions and let us know if you've got anything you want to hear from us. I think this is gonna be our last show for the year, right? Live.
Yeah, that's why we're kind of doing this summary, I guess.
Yeah, so what I love this summary, and David with some really strong words there on the future of interfaces for personal computing. Um, uh, I'm going to take us back to 2020 in the middle of COVID, uh, sitting at home in quarantine. And I got a call from someone who worked at Spaces who said, I really want you to come see this. You need to jump in to my app and see this tool I've got. And I jumped into it with a Zoom call, I think it was, and popped in, and there was this avatar inside the Zoom call on the other end of the call from Spaces. And I was in reality on my laptop looking through the camera, and he was seeing me and I was seeing him, even though he was an avatar in VR and I was out in the real world. And I brought my kid over. I'm like, look, that's someone in VR. Well, very quietly, a few months later, Spaces got bought by Apple. That technology stack got acquired, and all of that expertise that they have at that company went over to Apple. And it was one piece of this journey. If you go back to 2015, I had another piece of this journey. I went and talked to the co-founders of NextVR, and one of the co-founders there was telling me a story about him capturing video on a camera rig that looked much like the camera rig that was carried by that drone we had earlier in the show. And he had video of his dog, and then his dog passed away, got too old, and died. And the guy was telling me back in 2015, I think it was, that he wasn't ready to go back and look at the footage yet because it was too soon, and he would feel too present with his dear departed friend in order to go and see that footage again. That company, NextVR, was acquired by Apple. There's a guy I talked to at NASA who got hired at Apple years ago, and he gave me this quote, and he said that the television was the right medium to take people to the moon landing. You get you have one TV, and you're able to get 50 people in the room, all looking at the TV and able to see the moon landing simultaneously. What he said to me was that it wasn't the right medium when we go to Mars. There's a new medium that would be right for Mars. And he went and he's working at Apple. And I can't imagine, when these people go and work at Apple, they go dark. They become part of the team. They don't want to mess with their team. They don't want to say something outside of the team effort. They want to surprise and delight according to the overall mission of Apple. So we don't hear from these people. But there's a trend emerging here amongst these people who really believed in their technologies, and they believe in the idea that these headsets can legitimately transport you to another place. And they're betting on it. And the reason I have to paint that picture for all of you out there, right? The middle of a pandemic in 2020, being disconnected from the physical contact with other people. And a bunch of people at Apple got together and said, we want to build a device that will make this less horrible. I'm paraphrasing, I'm making up these quotes. If you're at Apple and this is the discussion you had back in 2020, let me know, right? Let me know whether this is close to what actually happened, because that's what it feels like on the outside when I see this headset.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to put it, a device that can transport you to somewhere else. That's been, the fundamental promise of VR technology since this industry has been revived, in 2012, with the Oculus Kickstarter. That's been the fundamental promise. The problem is, it's for most devices, in fact, for all of them until this, I would argue, it still felt like you're looking through a screen. And I think it's really, really interesting. Apple said, even if it makes this thing cost so much that it gets ridiculed for its price, we consider ultra high resolution micro OLED to be the fundamental requirement, right? We will will this into existence. We will literally, pay Sony to build up a supply chain of this one particular component. And from all the reports we've seen, Apple is not going to back down. They're not going to release an LCD headset. They consider this to be a fundamental requirement, because I think I've tried around 3 headsets now that have near 4K micro OLED panels. And looking through them, I always have one thought that I never have had with any other headset before. This no longer feels like looking through a screen. And I don't mean that, it's so high resolution that it's retinal. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying there's something about the pixel fill factor and the contrast and the colors of ultra high density micro OLED that makes you think I'm looking at something real. I'm looking through a piece of glass at an environment. And right now I'm in a Quest 3S. And even if you super sample this thing to hell, you always can still kind of see the LCD scan lines, and you can kind of see this very, very faint but real screen door that is, today you almost don't see it, but it is there. There is a gap between every pixel that you're kind of still aware of, that subtly makes you have the same feeling of, I'm looking at this screen. It's a 3D screen. It's an immersive screen. As I move my head through it, it's translating. It does feel, a much, much, much more real than looking at a monitor, but fundamentally I'm still looking at a screen. And that's why I'm so, what's the word? Bullish on this headset and of the headsets that will follow it, because when you do get that ultra high resolution micro OLED, and we will all eventually it'll be at such a low cost that it gets into every headset, it does cross that threshold of, I'm not looking at a screen. And that transports you somewhere else, right? Whether that be the incredible 3D scanned environments that are in Vision Pro's home that, as I've said before, cost hundreds of thousands of dollars each to make, or whether that be in an Apple immersive video that was filmed on a 8K per eye camera at ultra high bitrate. That feeling of I am in a different place is so accelerated by this headset that the rest of the industry are going to try and follow it. And you can see Samsung and Google doing the same, right? They're going, it's not confirmed, but it's almost certain that they're also going with ultra high resolution micro OLED in their headset as well.
Oh, I love this. This is fun. Getting back and forth into all this with you, David. If you look at the Quest 3S and you look at the Vision Pro, you see encapsulated so much strategy of these companies, so much effort across years, encapsulated in the hardware design of these products and the price tags attached with them, right? The Apple getting criticized for $3,500, Meta generally getting praised for $300, even though in our comments, and as David is kind of pointing out, there are consequences for these decisions, right? Only rich people can go and get the Apple Vision Pro. And then for the Quest 3S, right, you don't get true dark. You don't get true darkness. You don't get high quality films. You don't cross that threshold into productivity that Apple quite crosses in the way you just described, because of the pixel difference, right? Because of the display being that much further along. You don't quite get that to the same degree out of the $300 device. And you still get all the benefits of a head-mounted display out of both of them, right? So like, it's not like none of these things are gone from the other system, but they're pushing each other now, is I think the point. And I'm ready to talk about the future. I want to start thinking about 2025 here pretty soon.
Sure. Yeah, let's get into that soon. There's just one more thing we want to talk about in relation to 2024. So we've been over those 5 significant hardware releases of this year. Quest 3S, Pico 4 Ultra, Logitech's MX Ink, the PlayStation VR 2 adapter, and Apple Vision Pro. Now, there's 3 industry moments that I would like to discuss for 2024 that I think were deeply significant. 2 of them are highly related, so we can discuss them together, and one of them is very different. So the first, and we'll just discuss these all at once. The first is the opening of, how do I rephrase this? The first is the change from first-party headsets with first-party platforms to operating systems that Meta and Google hope the rest of the industry will adopt in third-party headsets. So Horizon OS and Android XR. First thing we'll discuss. The second is the opening up of stores. So at the start of 2024, the Meta Horizon Store, or Quest Store as it was called back then, had a console-like curation model where you had to get this very difficult approval from a Meta committee to get onto the store. And if you weren't that, you were an app lab, which was this unlisted, sort of second-class citizen version of the store where you had a store listing, you're on their system, but you're not showing up in search, you're not showing up in the categories, you're not being recommended. You have to do your distribution yourself. By the end of 2024 now, this is completely different. The Meta Horizon Store, as it's now called, works pretty much like the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, where any developer just submits an app. It's all in the same store. It's all searchable. It's all in the same algorithmic feed. That has had dramatic effects for the content ecosystem. Some of them dramatically negative, and some of them dramatically positive. And we talked about when this was announced that this would happen. This is something that certain people that wanted this to happen painted as this universal good, but it's not. It's a deeply complicated issue that has massive trade-offs. So these are the two industry trends, I think, this year. The opening up of operating systems, Horizon OS and Android XR, that mean that any company that wants to make a standalone headset now no longer has to roll up their own platform, right? If, LG wants to jump in, if Sharp or TCL wants to jump into this industry, they can go to Google with Android XR, or they can go to Meta with Horizon OS. And that's the one thing. The other thing is that opening up of stores, where if you're a developer and you want to build something, you get it on the store and you compete in this open marketplace for better and for worse.
Yeah, very interesting trends to think about and the interplay between them. Yeah, there's a lot of things to discuss. Let's look at the comments. People are talking about shovelware and the overwhelming difficulty of quality content to stand out now, and the fact that that's happened. So we've got our review of Behemoth from Skydance coming out today, I think.
I
Connect. What's going on here?
I think your internet's cutting there, Ian. I couldn't hear you for a little bit.
I'll be right back.
Sure. While Ian's away there, I'll just take some discussion. He wasn't muted. He just had, I can actually see in the top left of our tablets, we have a little debug display where if something's going wrong, say your battery is about to run out, or you're running out of RAM or something, or if your network conditions go bad, it'll pop up. So I saw the kind of bad network notification in the top left of his tablet there. I'm sure you'll be able to sort that out. A lot of the commenters are rightly pointing out the disadvantage of this opening of the store. I should point out that this wasn't just Meta. Pico did the same thing as well. So the Pico store is now following the same model. And that means that beforehand you had these, large studios have the store to themselves, essentially, with, a smaller amount of highly created content. And that really, really favored the incumbents, right? They didn't have this flood of shovelware, as you may call it, coming in to attack them. But that also deeply disfavored willing competitors, people who want to be there, right? Who would argue, we have the same right to be on the same store as you. That's their argument. I'm not taking a side here. I'm just saying what their argument would be. So once you do get these people onto the store, you mean that a new wave of developers can join in and they can make something that you may call shovelware. They would argue it's, just innovation, and you would argue it's shovelware. And that means that you're going to get significant kind of complaints from the existing developers who may have a $30 app that now has to compete against a $3 copy. That's a huge problem for them. And Meta will come and argue, that store spend per user has remained the same. But that could also mean that, store spend has gone from these very high quality projects from studios that employ 30 people and are gems of the industry, are getting less of that spend per user. And some, person who kind of opened Unity and imported some asset store stuff and put something on the store, get some of that spend. These are very, very complicated issues. And I think we have Ian back now.
Yep. Gosh, okay, so I don't know where I was when I lost it, and I see the comments are continuing at pace. There's a lot of really good discussion there. Yeah, so people are talking about the displays that have been chosen and what Apple has done. So the thing I want to bring up with the displays and going full circle to some of our discussion earlier, I went through the pre-2020 phase of VR, so the winter that we had where VR was hyped from 2014 to 2016, and then from 2016 to 2019 was this kind of winter as every company in the space that was so hyped for this realized the market is not large enough for me. And that during that phase, there were 360 videos, 180-degree videos, and we saw these companies pop up saying, I'm going to produce podcasts and 360 videos so that all the people in their Gear VRs and Go's have content to view in that 180-degree format. And it was like, why are you doing this? No one wants to sit there and watch a podcast being filmed. And here I am filming a podcast from VR several years later. The where I'm going with this, David, is there was comments in from you and comments from our audience that the quality has crossed a threshold when you look at something like the Vision Pro. It's OLED displays and the quality of the things that are being built for it. But if I go down the list of things like the scripted Apple immersive experience, if I go to the music videos, the Super Bowl experience, all of these, the thing that gets me on it, the thing I need to focus on with you is you didn't pay for any of those experiences. They're all provided free. And that is the same thing that was true of all of the funded 180-degree, 360-degree content that happened in that previous VR winter. None of that content was good enough to get you to pay for it in a headset. And I got to bring that up right now while we're closing this, we're getting to the end of the year, and we're thinking about, so what I was talking about Behemoth, Skydance, and I was talking about Alien Rogue Incursion with Survios. These are big development teams, big tentpole productions. They are literally bleeding over the project over at Skydance because they're getting tattoos for the game on their body. They're inscribing symbols from the game on their body as a symbol of like solidarity and that they believe in their project and their work. And those are dozens of people who worked on Behemoth, and then you've got a lot of people over at Survios working on Rogue Incursion. We're all worried. I can't end this year without saying I'm worried about layoffs at some of the biggest development studios in the world because of the same thing I'm talking about here, right? Like, how do you get enough people paying for VR content to support studios that are anywhere between 30 and 200 people? How do we get there? And I don't think it's necessarily through 180-degree video.
Yeah, sure. I mean, these are very separate content types, right? When it comes to games, on the positive side, what I would say is that, Behemoth is an example of a studio making their third giant title using, in many ways, the funding from their previous ones. If you're not aware, the developer of Behemoth is the same developer as The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners. So they sold the first one, Chapter 1, and they used the profit from that to build the second one, Chapter 2, and then the profit from both of those chapters gets put into their biggest title yet, Behemoth, taking that same physics-based combat system and putting it into an RPG, which I'm really enjoying so far. You can go up and see Henry Stockdale's review on UploadVR.com, our games expert, but I'm a huge fan of that style of physics, and I think if you look at the store and the success of the likes of Blade and Sorcery Nomad and Bone Lab, a lot of other people are a fan of that sort of level of physics. So we do already see these studios are literally examples of a VR gaming ecosystem working. When it comes to Vertigo games as well, that they released After the Fall, they released Arizona Sunshine 2 and the remake. These are examples of the exact definition of a VR gaming ecosystem. The profits from the first game being big enough to fund a bigger second game, a bigger third game, so on and so on. Now, the question, of course, is, are we seeing changes in the market that threaten that ecosystem that has held until now? And the answer is, of course, yes. And it does come straight back to that changing of how the store works, where just as when the iPhone released, a lot of the most popular apps were paid apps that at the time, believe it or not, cost $10, $20, even $30. You saw this massive race to the bottom where games got cheaper, and eventually you got this free-to-play model where people ironically end up, at least the whales end up spending more than they would have spent had the game just been a regular cost on all of these microtransactions. You start to see that general trend come to VR as well. As the thing is that as you expand from a less enthusiastic audience into the more mainstream, as you go from, the couple of million hyper enthusiasts to tens of millions of general gamers to then eventually 100, 200, 300 million regular people, their desire to spend dozens of dollars on a game, $60, gets lower and lower. What people don't really realize is that even like traditional gaming, hardcore gaming as we would call it, like playing on a PlayStation or an Xbox or Steam and spending that kind of money on a game, that's only around 100 or 200 million people. Meanwhile, when you look at how many people use a tablet or a smartphone, that's billions of people. So an order of magnitude more people are already used to this content model of paying nothing or a very small amount or nothing plus microtransactions. And it's going to be difficult as developers expand into that wider market to convince those people to spend these $60. Even if they would love the experience, they don't know until they try it. So there are all sorts of solutions there about, do you do trials and demos and things like that I'm sure all of these companies are exploring, but it is going to be a difficult transition period.
I don't know what's going on with my internet connection today, so sorry if I'm cutting in and out at various times. This is a really great discussion. Our commenters are going all over this. I love it. And they're seeing the overall trends, the creator economy being pushed with Horizon Worlds, the difficulty of content standing out. I've gotten pop-ups on my feed for McDonald's World, Office World, those worlds that are kind of like, that they're top on VR Chat and they're top on Rec Room, and of course they're going to be top on Horizon Worlds too. It's like we've got to have our own McDonald's, right? Built by our unpaid creator economy. How do we get? I got to go back to this thing of we talk about the problems. We can talk about the issue of layoffs and the trends toward freemium games, but that's not a solution. That's not how do we support more devs. So I just taking this opportunity to point out our showcase where we had dozens of indie devs out there showcasing their works. We published the Best in VR Games compilation just a few days ago on our channel from Mark Schramm, pointing out dozens of updates throughout the year from various devs out there. We have our Best of Awards coming out today, yesterday, and tomorrow. And I want to talk about one game on our Best of Awards in particular. I want to talk about Maestro. Maestro is going to be in our awards today. And I want to talk about this game that is based around hand tracking instead of controllers. And they added John Williams music and Fantasia music within the first few months of release. So at the end of this year, they already have a big new content update. And you play this game as a conductor. You look around and you do all the conducting movements in rhythm for the game. And we'll talk about it on our Gamescast with Don. Don might have already gone into it might already talk about it in our comments. But David, when I look at a game like this, Double Jack, a small studio that is working with Creature to get their game out, this game was rescued from demo hell. It was released as a demo and did not grab a big audience. Like, it had no way to transition from there. Creature worked with the developers and they got this onto storefronts this year. And it's an open landscape for them to do more with this title. And I don't know, David, I'm going to put the claim out there with this audience. We'll put it, I think, out there on Gamescast as well. This title, the idea that you've put down the controllers and now you're just in the open air conducting an orchestra, and you're conducting it with some of the best music that's ever been made, with some of the DLCs that they'll add to this over time. This idea has potential to be bigger than Beat Saber. And I feel like I've gone out on a limb to say that, even though I also don't feel like I've gone out on a limb to say that. How do you feel about that comment, David?
Well, I'd love to know why you think it will be bigger than Beat Saber. Right? Beat Saber remains, even after all these years, one of the most popular games on Quest and on Steam and on the original PlayStation VR. And, we're seeing constant music packs come out for it. We had Britney Spears recently, Metallica. I'm sure the commenters can think of other ones. And it seems like it's kind of arguably one of Meta's biggest hits. They did acquire it, they didn't make it. But I wonder, what is it about Maestro that you think has the potential to be bigger than Beat Saber?
Yeah, it's because the role play is more deeply ingrained. I think there's more people worldwide that have done this with their hands than have done this with their lightsaber battles on the playground, even though it's probably close.
Right, but Beat Saber's one saber in each hand, right? It's not.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, right. I was imagining the more basic sword fight. Yes, all right. So more people, do people dual wield in their dreams and their fantasies when they're playing stuff? Like, I'm just saying, like, this is universal. This is a completely universal thing for people to do. And you can do it without controllers, so it's more accessible on more devices.
Sure, but I mean, we're still not, we'll talk about this. I guess we'll start to talk about 2025 here, but it's not like hand tracking devices are cheaper than ones with controllers. We're in a weird market where the cheapest headset, the Quest 3S, comes with those controllers in the box. And I understand the accessibility argument for a game that has you like use thumbsticks and button combos and grab things and all of that, like a Behemoth style game. That's not particularly accessible to someone who's not really used to using game controllers. But Beat Saber is just hold them in your hand and go like that, right? I don't think there's anything more different than slice that block, slice that block, dodge that, versus waving around. I really like Maestro. It's an incredible game. I wonder. I do think it points towards something, right? Being able to deliver really compelling content without holding controllers. I just don't think Beat Saber is an example of an unaccessible game. I've put people who played a console or PC game before in Beat Saber and they picked it up in seconds.
No, that's fair. And our commenters are pushing back on that. You're absolutely right. And our commenters are right as well. So the Beat Saber's cubes that have to be slashed are easier to understand versus Maestro's notes. Yeah, I agree. So let's walk back from it could be better than Beat Saber. Let's say it's not, right? Okay, let's go back and we can check, put this in the claim chowder folder and we'll come back on it in 5 years. But what I want to point out is the more general thing that I'm pointing out is still true. That gaming is more accessible when you don't have to lug around your controllers. That at the same time, while you're right that the $300 cheapest VR headset on the market right now includes controllers, it's also true to say that the package would be smaller and less expensive if it didn't have to include controllers.
Sure, you could probably shave off $50, right, and sell it for $250 without controllers. Let's have that debate because it's going to be one of the big debates in 2025, isn't it? We're going to see, we have it pretty much confirmed that the Samsung Android XR headset is not going to have controllers in the box, but will support controllers as an accessory. That's not going to be a low-cost device. How will that shape the industry? The thing is, it doesn't really matter if there are a bunch of headsets that don't come with controllers if the majority of the market is still on Quest. Mark Zuckerberg has repeatedly made the claim that even when all of these entries come in, even when the other Horizon OS headsets arrive, that the most popular headsets will be Quests. And I find it difficult to imagine in the next 2 years or even 3 years that we will see another headset come out that sells tens of millions of units like Quest has. And so when you have that available, right, you have tens of millions of people out there. You have more people with controllers than not. It still makes sense for developers to target it as a minimum. Now, if we do get to a world eventually where there are more headsets in use without controllers than with, then of course you will start to see a massive market shift towards hand tracking. But right now I feel it's premature. And I suspect that Meta will actually continue including controllers for a very long time because it's one of their strengths, right? Android XR and Vision OS, they can bring in the App Store and the Google Play Store of 2D apps. That's their strength, right? They have the existing ecosystem integration with your Apple devices or your Android devices. Meta doesn't have that, but it has its own advantages, right? One is that they're selling first-party hardware at cost price, like a PlayStation, so that you can get these things out into tens of millions of people's hands. The other is right now that they are the platform that has precision controllers out of the box. So everyone building a Quest game, every single developer knows that they have those controllers. And sure, they can build something with hand tracking that's interesting. But like, let's be honest, maybe 90% of the store is still built around controllers. That will stay as long as Meta keeps including them in the box or another competitor doesn't sell headsets.
Interesting. Picking apart my words here with the audience. Bigger is, I think. I'm not going to say better. I didn't mean to say better here for the idea of Maestro. Bigger was the thing I wanted to throw out there. This idea that not having controllers. David's also not wrong on anything he's saying here, and I'm going to shift the discussion here to Android XR and Vision OS. And the thing that David just said about 3 years. That the Quest has this period here of dominance. I think if you can imagine your 6-DoF controller doubling as a mouse, you have a reason to take your controller with you next to your laptop. Like you can imagine taking your headset off and then taking your controller out on the table and moving it around as a mouse pad.
Why not just bring a mouse?
Because it's different hardware, and that's precisely this. I have a limited amount of space in my bag for one device. Do I bring a mouse or do I bring a controller? How do I?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at like the case for a Quest headset, look at where the controllers slot in. You can put a mouse in there. I think like if you consider the fact that a headset has a strap that takes a certain amount of space, within that strap, like these are not giant controllers. These Touch Plus controllers you have today, like pick them up right now, they're tiny. They fit into your hand. I think any case that could hold a Quest could also hold 2 controllers and a mouse without adding any more bulk.
And the keyboard. Then you get to the keyboard in order to operate the actual machine.
You have that on the laptop.
Let me reframe this in a different way. Android XR, I went and tried this out, and they made this pitch that anything is an accessory for Android XR. But they didn't really show me the extent of that idea. They just gave it as a general concept. But Android and Vision OS have barely begun to scratch the surface of taking command of your environment around you, of giving you access to all of those devices quickly and easily for whatever purposes you want. And so there is absolutely a future, David, where I walk over to the PlayStation VR 2 controllers or other sets of controllers, and the headset, whatever headset it is, tells me, would you like to connect to these? And I hit, connect in midair, and boom, I pick them up, and they're tracked in low latency, and I'm good to go, right? And the other things are true too, right? Like you can do that with a mouse and a keyboard and do the same sort of connect, do it to a computer, all of those things. Android can do that in the same way that that Vision OS can. It looks like Meta's going to have to team up a little with Microsoft to make some of these capabilities work for its system. And then, Meta's going to have to also partner with a whole bunch of others to make it work for phones, make it work for any other devices you can think of that it needs to connect to. This is my point. When we introduce our show, David, I say that VR is the foundation of personal computing, or the next steps of personal computing. And what I want to get across to our audience here, what I want us to think about is, if you have a head-mounted display as the center of your personal computing ecosystem, if it's the first device you put on when you get up in the morning, after you wake up, before you even grab your phone necessarily, what does it look like to interact with the rest of your world? If that's the interaction you have with VR, if it's the first thing you put on. And I want us to think, as we go into 2025, what platforms are really ready to live that way with you, like really take over all of your devices and consume everything. Because what I'm getting at here, David, is if you put on the headset first, you don't need any other screen in the house. Not one
Sure.
other screen you own is necessary. Gia Godin in our comments pointed out on a previous show that the headset could be a phone, right? Like you don't even have a phone anymore. The headset is it, or glasses are it in that case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that brings us back to our classic chart that we have to bring up all the time, and it wouldn't be a kind of year-end show without having that chart. But I think AR glasses eventually does get to that use case where that's the device that once it gets good enough, you pick up instead of your phone. Sure. When it comes to headset, I still think it's going to be a lot like a tablet or a laptop. It's something that you pick up for these focused sessions. So, it could be productivity. I think if you look at the desk of the future, it doesn't have these physical monitors. It has your mouse and keyboard. Absolutely. Yeah. All of these headsets already do connect to mice and keyboard, right? Vision OS 2 got support for mice. MetaQuest has supported keyboards and mice for years now. And you're absolutely right to say that you're going to have really easy access to those, just in the same way that today your AirPods switch from devices, your keyboards are going to automatically switch to the device you need for sure. That could also include, you sit down in the evening and you want to watch a movie in bed after a long day of being out hiking or something. Of course, you put on your headset, but when you're out in the world, I don't think it replaces your phone. I just think having this thing on that kind of encompasses a headset form factor is very, very different from something that you can kind of quickly pick up and access as you walk around the world. That's where the glasses come in eventually. You're muted there, Ian.
Yeah, so lots of interesting discussion for us to get into here. I'm gonna push back on a couple things of just
Sure.
you bring down the weight into super, make it super lightweight, and maybe have a pack on you in order to keep it super lightweight. You've said that we've got a tractable problem here for improving the pass through to be even better than it is today. And as I've experienced in recent days with things like Figma XR, you turn off all the lights in your house and then turn on Figma's room scanning, and you're still navigating the house via room mesh and giving yourself essentially X-ray vision. Very you didn't even mean to, and suddenly you're able to do this. And what is it? Not Suspicious's comment here saying that they wish hand tracking was activated by default more often on Quest systems because they started using the headset more when they activated hand tracking, and that's what
Yeah.
I've experienced.
I mean, look, when it comes to the hand tracking debate, I completely agree that in combination with eye tracking, hand tracking is going to be the default way that you experience these headsets. More people will use hand tracking than controllers. Hand tracking will be if you're watching a movie, if you're setting up a productivity space, if you're having a virtual meeting with someone. 9 out of 10 times in the future, you're not going to pick up controllers. The point of disagreement I have, and I think some of the commenters would agree with me on this, is for gaming. I still think that when you want to play a game, you're going to pick up your controllers. And sure, there are examples of casual games that you play with your hands, and those are great. And there are some developers doing amazing work there. But I think that's more akin to the kind of gaming you would do on your phone or tablet today, right? Where you're playing like Candy Crush or something like that. It's a quick, 5-minute session you would have. If you want to play games for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, especially, with your friends from across the world, you're going to pick up controllers and get that extra level of fidelity and haptics and interactivity, because these controllers are already really kind of light and slim, and they cost next to nothing to include in the box anyway.
So I've got a big screen beyond in my office. It's up here on a stand, and it's taken me a long time to set up this office this way, but it's set up the way that this hardware is most likely to be used. So I've got the big screen beyond set up right here with a couple laser base stations, and then I've got it running into a PC that's hiding in a closet so that it produces the heat for the closet, not for the room, so that this room is bearable in warm weather. And then in the bedroom, I've got like a hanging hook over near my bed where it perfectly fits a bag, a VR headset bag that I can put on the hook, and I can take 3S or Apple Vision Pro to bed with hand tracking only, no controllers whatsoever. Or I can walk from that room all the way over here to my office grab the index controllers off the rack, enjoy my base stations, enjoy my PC, enjoy all of this infrastructure that I've built for it, or I can go anywhere I want with these standalone VR headsets. I need to I agree with you, David, that gaming is still better with controllers, but you still can have great gaming without controllers too. And the potential is so huge there that devs are only getting started with the implementation of their ideas with hand tracking. And then what happens when you add a little bit of haptic feedback via the wrists that just gives you a little bit more on top of what you get out of the self haptic feedback? What if you improve the tracking a little bit? Because there's still situations where if you pinch like this, with the headset not able to see the pinch properly, it breaks the game or makes the pinching not work. None of this is I'm not saying it's better in every situation. It isn't. It absolutely isn't. But it's still potentially is a bigger market.
Sure, yeah, it is. It's a bigger market, just like we see with gaming today, right? They're already mobile and freemium revenue exceeds the kind of hardcore gaming revenue. As Headset Historian says in our comments, casual games eclipse hardcore games, but hardcore games are the ones that drive the conversation and art. And sure, we kind of exist in that world today where when we say hand tracking, you might as well be saying touchscreens. And when you say controllers, you might as well be saying, regular gamepads and mouse and keyboard. So more people play Candy Crush than will ever play God of War. But there is this significance in the kind of the art and the medium to God of War that eclipses Candy Crush in itself. So you can look at this in pure economic terms, and sure, that's true. But you could never have delivered an experience like God of War on a touchscreen, arguably. And that's just a random game I've pulled out of my hat. You could talk about Elven Ring or whatever you want, whatever your game of choice is.
So Georg Jorgensen is saying exactly, Ian, to my developers only getting started with hand tracking. That's why Quest must come with controllers now and likely for years to come. Yeah, I totally get that. It's a good, solid viewpoint. What I'm trying to convey, and I'm failing to get all of this, is right. Apple is one of the biggest shippers of displays in the world, right? I can't if you add up all the displays that are on iPhones, iPads, Macs across the entire line, they're shipping hundreds and hundreds of millions of displays every year. And now we have a central device, Vision OS, a Vision headset that doesn't need any of those other displays. And in fact, those devices are all wasting their battery power to show a picture when you're wearing a headset because the headset could be showing it to you instead. And it's in fact a privacy issue now. You want the display to turn off for other people while you are in headset in most cases. And that's exactly what happens with Mac Virtual Display.
And with the Windows 11 integration as well, they do that.
And so my point, and that's even the Windows 11 integration. So we've got a couple people out there using the Windows 11 integration with us. You go install that and get that up and running. It instantly turns your Windows 11 machine into a headless PC. Now, to turn on your PC, you're going to a menu system and clicking connect, or you're just, you don't have to it becomes really feasible for you to be in another state and log on to your PC back at home, and the PC never even is connected to a display. Now, I don't know that that's going to work software-wise. Geek Odin in the comments has been bashing his head against the software issues there to make this possible for years. But they're going back to the early days of Vive, right? You could set up a headless Vive really not easily, but you could set up a headless Vive and then just put your headset on and there's your Windows desktop. That's what we're moving towards right now between Mac Virtual Display and Windows 11's desktop mode. They're the same thing, doing the same thing. They're eating PCs, but they also need to eat phones. They need to eat iPads. They need to eat all of the other things.
Sure.
My point being is if you don't need those, if you're a company like Meta that's shipping Quest 3s, you don't have to ship a single other device with a display on it. All you need it to ship with is your Meta Horizon OS APIs to hook in everything to your Quest visualization system. Whereas Apple is shipping hundreds of millions of displays every year, those are actually a liability for VR use. So my point is the how strong, how much Apple believes in VR will be visible in how many devices they ship that don't require displays.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying about integration with existing devices. The one counter I would give is that when it comes to your phone or your iPad, these are devices with less computing power than your headset. And so I think on the very, very, very long term, they go away, right? The iPad goes away because it's just a computer with a fixed screen running a mobile OS. You get that already in your headset and your glasses. The idea of being limited to like a 10-inch screen that you hold in your hand is ridiculous when you get to a future where you can spawn whatever size screen wherever you want and have all of these apps open. But I don't think that gets achieved by your iPad being wirelessly merged to your headset. I think that gets achieved by the iPad eventually disappearing completely and all of the apps that are on iPad becoming just an app that you run in Vision Pro. It's already a focus you see, right? With Android XR as well, it's the same focus. Where the devices that you still do have, that you still do want to have, are ones that have more computing power. So or a more powerful operating system. So why do you connect to a Mac instead of just doing everything on the Vision Pro? Why do you want to connect to your Windows 11 PC instead of doing everything on the headset? Because the devices that are running these operating systems, your Mac or your PC, are more powerful than the headset and have an operating system that let you do more. So yes, you will start to see office setups that have a Mac Mini or a Mac Studio plus a Vision Pro, and eventually, and we're talking about the long-term future here. Eventually, you get a MacBook that doesn't have a screen, so you have the keyboard and the battery and the computing all built in. So, it's not just a Mac Mini because it also has a battery and a keyboard. A Mac Mini doesn't have that. And then you have your Vision headset and eventually your Apple glasses as the ability to spawn the monitors. The idea of physical screens go away, just like for many people, the idea of having like a separate GPS in your car doesn't make sense. It just becomes an app on your phone. Same thing with a calculator. The vast majority of people don't own a physical calculator. It becomes an app on their phone. Same thing with like portable gaming consoles. People that used to buy a Game Boy or a DS, a lot of them these days just play games on their phone. An alarm clock, a stopwatch, all of these things that used to be, a digital camera. Physical devices become apps in the same sense. What you're saying is, and I completely agree, that a lot of the devices today that are built around being a screen become just software or within this, but you still do access this greater computing power. So you may imagine a future where your PC setup is the same as it is today from the PC side, but instead of the monitors, you have this lightweight, ultra high resolution headset with a wide field of view and very clear optics ready to go. The interesting question then becomes, for what percentage of people is that compute local and for what percentage is it cloud? Because Microsoft has already announced what the next step in its Meta partnership is going to be. So today you connect to a Windows PC that you physically own. The next step that they're going to bring to Quest is the ability to rent a cloud PC. So remember that today there are a lot of people who do not own a PC. They own for a huge percentage of the world today, their only computing device is their smartphone. So if you eventually imagine these people getting to a world in the very long term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, where their only computing device is a pair of glasses, then they can use those glasses plus a mouse and keyboard to connect to a cloud PC that gives them the full power of a Windows PC or a Mac, whatever operating system they choose, depending on their preference, to access a giant monitor with the full power of video editing software, development tools for games, Unity and Unreal Engine and VS Code, and all of the production tools that people need a real operating system with a lot of computing power to access.
Whew. A lot of things to think about. I'm Jorg replying to him. Things are going in the direction I described, but much of this conversation is putting the cart before the horse. I appreciate that. But we do that on this show a little bit. It's what we're
Yeah.
trying to do is picture the future and where things are going. And I think my point that like I gotta stress here is Apple's coming from this place of strength, right? They've got iOS as this dominant mobile platform. They've got this integration all the way down to the silicon, and I'm gonna lose. I guess I'm gonna lose some of the audience on this, but I got to go down this rabbit hole of just explaining. I've got my laptop right here, but before I got my laptop out today, it was hanging in my backpack. It was in my backpack by the front door with a cord running to it, high output cord to keep it charged inside the backpack. 100% today, I can unlock that laptop, pull it up, Mac Virtual Display, and an ultra wide display that's like 7K or something, and put the laptop into the backpack up by the front door, closed up, charging, and just work on my laptop for the rest of the day with my laptop being closed up in my bag the entire time. Now, I can do the same thing. The laptop is an M3. I can do the same thing with an M2 Mac Mini that I have sitting right over there, and that also works with Mac Virtual Display. But what I've noticed here is that there is a massive, massive improvement Apple has implemented between M2 and M3.
I think we just lost Ian there temporarily. But yeah, the point he's making there is definitely significant, that the ability to have this enormous ultra-wide monitor, we've talked about it so much in this show, but it does point to a really significant future where you still do have these computing hardware, this local compute, but you're no longer limited to whatever display is attached to it or that you have purchased for it. Sorry,
Yep.
Ian, go ahead and continue. Oh.
Yeah, I'm back, right? I hope I'm back.
I think you're back, yeah.
Biggs out there in the comments echoing where I was going with that. In ultra wide, I essentially have access to 4 Macs for pumping out builds. It is amazing. I echo and feel that too. So I've got 2 Macs. One is an M2, one is an M3. The M3 can go inside my backpack, closed up laptop, come out as a laptop when I want it, or just stay in there as this ultra wide thing. The M2 isn't as advanced, right? Like it doesn't handle everything. If I go into ultra wide mode on the M2 while also doing a bunch of things on its display, it doesn't keep up the way the M3 does. And now we're up to M4 on the Mac Mini. You see Apple on its chip technology all the way across. You see this march of performance going across for them. But also keep in mind that other thing I'm saying, right? They're shipping displays. Meta showed the Orion glasses with a band being used on the wristband of the person that had 0 display on it, no display technology. So, yes, we're putting the cart before the horse. But my point is that these companies have completely diametrically opposed opportunities to each other. Apple needs to get they both need to get to billions of users. They're both wanting to sell devices to the same single person. But Apple has to figure out how to do it at $500 to $1,000, and then Meta has to figure out how to improve all of their software so you get all of the benefits that Apple users get out of their ecosystem, out of Meta's ecosystem. Things like Find My do not exist inside Meta's ecosystem. There's nothing like it. And
Sure.
that's I'm not going to leave Apple, and there's millions of people that aren't going to leave Apple for years until Meta is able to build an equivalent of something like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like Meta's biggest challenge is building that ecosystem. It's its biggest weakness. As I said, one of their advantages is having this immersive content library, is having controllers. But that's why on the PC side, their partnership with Microsoft is so significant. So if you're in that Apple ecosystem and you're used to the integration between your watch, your phone, your AirPods, your Mac, you're probably going to eventually, get a Vision headset when it's at the right price for you and has the right features you want, and eventually Apple glasses. Outside there, I think the competition is a lot more open, right? There are a lot of people who live in a life where their PC is from Microsoft, their operating system at least is Windows, their phone is Android or iOS. Those people don't have that level of ecosystem integration already, right? If you imagine a hypothetical universe where Microsoft Windows Mobile had succeeded, then you would have this strong ecosystem integration between your Windows PC and your phone. But we don't, right? There is the Phone Link app. Recently, there are kind of Google's Nearby Share you can install on your PC to make your integration a little bit better. But right now, your Windows PC and your Android phone are pretty much completely different, just as your iPhone would be if you're using a Windows PC. So Meta can exist in that world. Another example of a company that has a successful product category without an ecosystem is Amazon, right? You get your Alexa speaker and your Alexa screen and all of your other Alexa stuff. It doesn't integrate with your phone, right? They have an app, but they can do no more than any other person's app. That doesn't integrate with your Apple devices. It doesn't integrate with your Google devices. Same thing with their Fire TV and their Fire tablets. So Amazon is probably the closest equivalent to what Meta is doing. They did it with the smart home. Could Meta do it with XR? Keeping in mind that they do have integration with Windows, right? That integration with Microsoft is only going to get stronger. We've seen many reports that Microsoft has gutted its own internal XR department, and that its strategy for the long term is partner with Meta, continue to partner with Meta.
Geek Odin out there, creator of Virtual Desktop, saying, I'm in that boat. I work on Windows, develop for Android, and use iOS for everything else. And I think he's not alone in that. There's a lot of people who live in that sort of lifestyle. And I felt it this year. I've seen it amongst my contacts, people who suddenly are using Vision Pro a couple hours a day, feeling the lure to go get an Apple Arcade subscription or an Apple TV subscription to benefit from those added things. I think, we've gone all over the board here on this show, and I wanted to focus on. Sorry, David, go ahead.
Well, I know I was going to make the same suggestion that, we've gone very wide, we've gone very general, we've talked far beyond 2025, but in our title we have this looking ahead to 2025. So I wanted to spend some time making some specific, focused, non-tangential predictions and projections for 2025, not 2026, not 2030, not 2040, 2025. And I think I'll start and then you can give yours. So one thing I want to be clear on is I do not think we will see a new Meta headset. I don't think we're going to see a Quest 4 in 2025. All of the reports indicate that Quest 4 is slated for 2026, and those reports suggest that Meta will release a budget and a regular model at the same time. So a Quest 4 and a Quest 4S in late 2026. So that would be just under 2 years from now. So next year, what I do think we'll see from Meta is HUD glasses. So we've seen the Orion AR glasses prototype. I do not think we're going to see an AR glasses product from Meta in 2025. The Orion prototype, as we have said so many times on this show that I'm sure you're sick of hearing us talk about, is an early prototype of something that they cannot ship anytime soon. They've been clear about that they don't even intend to ship any AR glasses product based on Orion, but they will use parts of Orion for eventual products. Next year, I think we'll see something that sits between Orion and the Ray-Ban glasses of today. The Ray-Ban glasses today, they have cameras, they have microphones, they have speakers, but they don't have a display. I think we're going to see HUD glasses that give you a heads-up notifications, so you can have your phone notifications appear floating in a small waveguide display in front of you with a small field of view. It will let you have text output from Meta AI, so you can ask questions and not always have to hear it in your ear out loud in public especially. You can just have that pop up depending on the context. I think they'll probably use it to show you a viewfinder, so you see a kind of small photo stamp sized view of the picture you're about to take if you want to line up a more specific picture. And there'll be other kind of use cases for this. It will, our commenter here, Jay Huddub, is saying something like Ray Neo. Like, yes, Ray Neo, but with good software, because I criticized how bad the software was on that thing. I also think we're going to see the same thing from Samsung and Google. There have been multiple reports suggesting that they want to build the same thing. Firstly, a Ray-Ban Meta competitor with no display, but eventually, as Google has made pretty clear in their Android XR discussion, they want to have their own HUD glasses, and we actually saw that teased at Google I/O, right? We saw them show the idea of having Gemini with Vision on a pair of HUD glasses. And so before we get any kind of AR glasses, I think we're going to see relatively compelling HUD glasses that give you kind of a midpoint, and they could land at around $500 or $600. Whereas I expect the first true AR glasses from these companies are going to be more on the order of $1,200, $1,500, maybe even $2,000, and arrive several years later on this time scale of sort of 2026. But what I do expect to see, though, next year, while we won't see any new Quest headset, is I think we will see the first Horizon OS headsets from partners. That could be Asus or Lenovo, the two confirmed companies so far. Recently, at Lenovo's tech conference, I think it was last month, they said that they are still building that headset, so that hasn't gone anywhere. And earlier in this discussion, we had some commenters ask when we were waxing lyrical about the benefits of micro OLED. Do we think that we will see a Meta headset soon with that? No, I don't, but I do think one of these partners probably will. The information that I have heard so far, and this is, don't quote me on this, it's just what I've heard, is that Lenovo's headset will be focused on productivity and thus may use something like an external battery and a micro OLED display. We don't know yet. These are headsets. We don't have any confirmed details. It'll be very interesting to see if that does happen. We could essentially get a Quest Pro 2 from another one of these companies, right? You could get something that gives people what they want, higher resolution OLED displays, eye tracking on Meta's Horizon OS, but it's not a Quest headset. It's from someone else. Then we should say, the other thing in 2025 is obviously Android XR. Ian recently tried Samsung's headset. Samsung has said that it will launch in 2025. What we don't know is the price, but I would have to guess somewhere around $2,000. And I want to be crystal clear that is a complete guess. I think that this thing will not really disrupt the Meta Quest ecosystem in any way. You may see Meta copy some of the things from Android XR and vice versa. But what I do think this will offer is a Vision Pro for Android owners. It's just going to be people who would maybe think about a Vision Pro but aren't in the Apple ecosystem will get an option from Samsung. One thing I think is going to be very problematic in direct competition, though, is this rear strap. That strap does not let you lie back on a bed or a sofa like we've discussed earlier in the show, and that's going to be problematic for if Google wants to compete on the movie watching experience. We've seen that one of the things they do want to have on Android XR is their Google Store movie service. So you'll be able to rent movies from Google. I think they said Prime Video will be there as well, just like it is on Meta Quest now, Horizon OS in September. But it's going to be tough if you can't actually lean back on that. I think I saw like a developer point out that it's clear that nobody's actually thought about this by putting this. There was a VR developer out there who kind of said that they were shocked at this decision because of that. The other thing we should say, by the way, that this will secure as something that the industry is comfortable with is an external battery. I forgot to say this on the 2024 discussion, but one of the other things that Vision Pro did was make an external battery okay. There were multiple Oculus employees from back in the day when Apple Vision Pro was released who publicly said, we argued for this so much, but the executives said no, that was crazy. And I think one of them gave this really funny quote where they said, one of the things that the executive at Facebook at the time said to kill this idea was, do you think Apple would ever put a dangling battery out of the back of a headset? And so the irony, of course, is that not only would Apple, but Apple is the first. And now I think that makes everyone comfortable to do this. The Samsung headset is going to be the same. And we understand that Meta is working on a 2027 headset that's supposed to be this like ultra light, steampunk goggles form factor, kind of like a maybe standalone big screen beyond kind of form factor, but with the compute in a tethered puck as well. So that's a trend we expect to see there. I think beyond that, the biggest sort of question I'm sure that a lot of the audience wonder about 2025 is, will this be the year of Valve? Will Valve finally, for the first time in 6 years, release new hardware instead of the aging and kind of quite archaic Index at this point? That is the big kind of dark horse potential here. I think the fact that those Valve controllers were leaked, the Valve Deckard Roy controllers, strongly suggests that 2025 could be the year, but I don't think we're going to see it like next month or something like that. I think if this does happen, it would be in the later half of the year, coming into the holiday 2025. This is the big dark horse to keep an eye on.
Ooh, yeah, David had a lot of reasoned explanations there. I've done no reasoning here on my expectations for next year, so expect me all over the board in comparison to what David just gave. I think 2025 is going to surprise us, is the simplest way I'm going to put it. I kind of feel like Apple Vision Pro proved.
Oh, I think we may have just lost Ian again. I'll just look at some audience comments while we wait for Ian to return. Let's see here. VR Gamer Dude saying that they love their Quest Pro and really hope they make a second version. Unfortunately, from what we've seen in reports, it looks like they are not going to do that anytime soon. As I said before, though, I think that the Horizon OS partners will do it. I think either Asus or Lenovo or someone else will make basically a Quest Pro 2, except it won't have Meta's logo on it, except for the Horizon OS logo. It'll have that other company's. And sort of, like, I don't think these Horizon OS headsets are going to be $500. They're not going to be like different. You can't magically make a better headset than Quest 3 at $500. And also, these companies need to make a profit, but they will be that higher end option, right? They're going to be $1,000, $1,500, maybe even $2,000. And that's where the people that want a better hardware for the Horizon OS platform will get it. And we have Ian back.
Yeah, I don't know why I got disconnected there. Apple Vision Pro, it's such a muted response because of the price, right? Like, I think so many people discounted it because there's this impression that Apple only makes things for rich people. And I get it. I get that that's the impression that they're giving people this day and age, but I don't know if that's fair to the company and with the effort that they try to do. Apple Vision Pro is what they needed to ship in order to bring all of those technologies down to the prices we want them to be at. So if we get Apple and Valve headsets before the end of 2025, if we get new Apple headset, and if we get the Valve headset before the end of 2025, maybe then we can stop feeling like we're defending this industry and actually, helping people just navigate it, right? Like that's what I'm getting sick of doing. Like I'm tired of explaining these are gonna happen and just saying, well, this is actually happening in very large numbers, and this is what happened this week. We had 1 million headsets sold and a bunch of people got virtual desktop, right? Like, I would love for that to be the changing narrative of this space, rather than like, are AR glasses actually going to be the thing? Every discussion going that way.
Yeah, I think it'll become more and more clear to people as we see, Samsung entering, Valve re-entering, new Apple hardware potentially, and all these companies come along with headsets. And even years will go by after the Orion prototype, where no one has actually shipped anything like it as a product. I think at that point it should become clear to people what Orion was. I mean, I think the most frustrating thing in 2024 for me was what you just said, where people are under the completely false impression that anyone could ship Orion as a product anytime soon. And I want to just be crystal clear, as someone who's been in this industry for, over 10 years now, that is simply not the case. Orion is as Meta describes, a time capsule. It is an example of what happens if you do not worry about cost or manufacturability and just try to make something that just is the best possible without even thinking about making a product. And it proves a future. It's Meta, again, is not even hiding this. This isn't some conspiracy. Meta is crystal clear about this. They call it a North Star, a time machine that lets you live in the future. But in the near term, before we get even acceptable AR glasses, we're going to get amazing mixed reality headsets. The pass-through that we see on Quest 3 and Apple Vision Pro is generation 1 pass-through. And the grand claim I make for this decade is that by the time we get to the end of the decade, 2030, by the time we get there, we will have pass-through headsets that are so good that when you want to do a task in the real world, be it like, write something on a piece of paper or go take something out of the oven, you won't take your headset off anymore because the pass-through will be so good and the headset will be so comfortable that you'll just keep it on and then walk back into the room you're in and resume the task you were on. And at that point, you still get all the advantages of a VR style display system. You get the much wider field of view, the full control over every pixel, the ability to have opacity, all of these gigantic advantages that you wouldn't get in transparent optics. There's one thing I want to pick up on that you said, Ian, actually, which I didn't really say in my 2025 expectations, which is the possibility that we do get a Vision Pro 2 at the end of 2025. So that report from Ming-Chi Kuo, the supply chain analyst, a while ago said that Apple does plan an M5 refresh of Vision Pro for either to enter mass production in late 2025. So that could suggest that it doesn't launch until early. A very strong possibility here could be that they launch it on the 2-year anniversary of Vision Pro 1, right? So in February 2026, we see a Vision Pro 2 arrive with that M5 chip. But you're right to say that that Apple could be more aggressive than that, right? We could see October, maybe Apple comes out with that Vision Pro 2 and starts trying to push everything forward even further.
So I want to paint a picture of a future that we can have in 2025, but we won't have it in 2025 because we don't have a single platform controlling everything here. So in 2025, you could put on your VR headset, pull up Google Maps, Google Earth, and map out your location, your route that you're going to go over the next 3 hours. So you map out your whole route before you actually go down. So you go to Android XR, you go to Google Maps, you open up the location you're going to go to. Let's say you're going to go on a hike through your local town, and you want to go for a 3-hour hike. You go into Google Maps on your Android headset first, and you look at the entire path before you go there. You follow along, you pull your way along the map, and you visualize your whole route as you go. You get the whole route outlined. You ask Gemini, what is that building over there to the right of the path? And Gemini explains to you, okay, that's a coffee house or something, right? Then you say, send this to maybe it does it automatically. Hopefully it happens automatically. You finish here in your headset, you pull it off your head, you put on a pair of glasses with a HUD display on them. And now the directions are floating. An arrow is floating in front of you, pointing you where you need to go to get where you just mapped and saw in your VR headset. You already know, you've got a lay of the land quite literally in your head. Now you're wearing glasses and you're walking out. You've got a phone in your pocket. You go out there and you're getting arrows pointing you to where you want to go. You could even take a call and let them look out your glasses, out your camera at what you're seeing. So you're walking down the street, they're seeing the dogs on the street and that you're seeing, and it's all getting relayed to your phone, and they're looking at what you're seeing. You're hearing the other person on the phone as you're going around. You go and do your trip. You do your 3 hours hike through the park or whatever. You go back home. You put your VR headset on, and all the photos and videos that you downloaded to your phone, all the photos and videos that you downloaded that you captured with your glasses, they all get sucked up by your VR headset, and now you're going through them on this giant display and picking out your best and sending them off to social media or editing them, trimming them out. All of that is 100% doable right now with current technology. It's just split across 3 different platforms: Android XR, Meta, and Apple Vision Pro. None of these are doing all of the things I just described.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting future to imagine. And you're right to point out that how these kind of very simple, low compute glasses could integrate well with these very high compute immersive headsets. I think it's a great use case. I mean, we don't even have the Hug glasses yet, right? There are a couple of Chinese ones, but they're pretty terrible. I wonder how much integration we will see. I wonder if we'll see Meta even start to do more integration between Ray-Ban and Quest. It's remarkable that they don't have that yet, right? You can't open your Quest headset and see a gallery of your Ray-Ban photos yet. That's something that literally they don't even have set up yet. So um, you got to wonder, is that just like a shipping the org chart problem, or do they just consider it like there's not enough people that use both Ray-Ban and Quest? They're kind of distinct use cases for now. It'll be interesting to see to what extent, and that could really be a strength of Android XR, that you do get that kind of level of integration there. And we, on the Apple side, that's not going to come for a while, because the reports indicate that Apple's first glasses of any kind aren't going to come until 2027, and we're not even talking about AR glasses. They're just talking about like a Ray-Ban Meta competitor.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of hopes and dreams for 2025. Although we don't know what actually is going to follow through. There's a lot of opportunities ahead for interesting products. I think, it's interesting Meta killed its Portal video calling product. It's interesting Meta did not ship its first watch, right? Yet they're still pushing through, right? We've still got a wristband that has no display on it that can help. You can reach behind your back and still do pinches with your glasses. We I think it's going to happen quicker than people expected, now that we've actually got so many good uses inside VR headsets, right? Like there's uh, displays everywhere is going to win a lot of people in the next year, and you won't be doing that in those little itty bitty small field of view glasses anytime soon. Like that's the thing. We're gonna get to do a parade in 2025 around all the people that went and go and try the glasses, and they're like, those are cool, but wait, where did my field of view go? Like more people are going to start learning what field of view is and why it matters, and why all
Yeah.
those glasses out there aren't doing what the field of view in their VR headset does.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of companies, particularly Chinese companies, release kind of AR glasses, and they're going to say, look, there was Orion. You saw how cool Meta's Orion prototype was. Look, we have a product now, and influencers on X and all of the other platforms will hype it and go, oh wow, cool AR glasses, and they'll show you all of these stupid videos where the field of view is infinite. And they don't care, because they care about getting their impressions and revenue. They don't care whether any of it's real. And then the poor suckers who end up actually going to buy these glasses will put them on and go, oh crap, when they realize that you only see like a little tiny slice of each virtual object as you pan your head around, and not the kind of fully immersive 130 diagonal field of view that you get out of these headsets. Because even when we talk about the field of view of headsets versus glasses, there's a sneaky thing that often happens here, where we give glasses the good looking number, which is diagonal, right? So even when you say Meta's Orion is 70 degrees, in your head, you kind of think, oh yeah, well, VR headsets are around like 100, 110 degrees. But no, they're not. A VR headset like, an Apple Vision Pro or a Quest 3 in particular, its diagonal field of view is actually something like 130, 140, 150. So if you're actually to compare that then to 70, it sounds a lot less impressive there. But I think, as Ian's saying, yes, 2025 will cement the year that it's clear that headsets are the near-term future, and a huge part of the long-term future as well. And it will be hard to ignore this this industry, right? When you could ignore it very easily when it was just Meta. It becomes a little bit harder to ignore when this is Apple. Now you have Samsung and Google. Then if you have Valve, if you have literally a complete speculation, but if Valve launches a headset next year and it has the same focus on virtual screens, particularly on playing your existing Steam games on a giant virtual screen, and you open Steam and this thing is literally on the top banner being advertised to you alongside the Steam Deck, all of this becomes much, much harder to ignore. And it's very, very clear that not only is this industry not going anywhere, not only are the naysayers who claim that it's contracting just completely and objectively wrong, but it's growing. More and more companies are jumping in, and the foundations of the future are being laid.
Yeah, so I think we're ready to close out here really soon, but I think I've got a good closing thought here now that I've really talked it out with our audience here and you, David. And I think what we'll see is Meta search for profit in VR outside of gaming in 2025. And I think we'll see Apple try to get gaming right in VR in 2025. I think those are that's the hole Apple needs to go close up for itself, if outside of getting the hardware cheaper. And then the hole that Meta needs to pursue now is, let's actually make use of this surface for VR other than just games. Let's figure out what we can make money on in other places in VR. I just we don't want it all to be on Horizon Worlds, do we? We'll see, I guess. Anything else you want to cover or say before we close out, David?
Yeah, let's just go through some of audience comments. If you do have a question or comment you want read out, this is the time as we close up the show. James O'Loughlin is saying that as well as entries, he expects some exits. He bets that Google will exit again at some point. They obviously did have their Daydream platform back in 2018 that they quickly abandoned after maybe 18 months. James O'Loughlin is also predicting that Snap will exit. They've only shown a development kit so far, and they seem to have a deep commitment, but that's their opinion.
So the name of the game between Google and Meta is going to be collaboration. Like they're gonna, even though I know they're competing, right? But at the end of the day, you've got business executives at both companies going, we got to make a deal here. Like we've got to figure out a way for these things to work together. I'm gonna to James's thing of Google backing out. I'm gonna suggest that Google could back out of Android XR and still be successful in the VR space because of services like Google Earth.
Yeah, you're right. They could theoretically back out from Android XR. I don't like talking about the idea of this feeling when it hasn't even launched yet. I think they are very serious this time. I think Samsung is in many ways you could argue either the first or second best hardware company in the world. It's a serious partner. You have Sony also committed to Android XR. At the very least, it would be a venture on the scale of Android TV that Google continues to go. When it comes to this idea of, will Google and Meta eventually kind of merge against Apple and kind of work together? You could argue that it is in their best interest, but you could also argue that it isn't because each wants to own the platform. You could make the same argument back in the day about Windows Mobile and Android, right? You could say, the iPhone is out there. Google's trying to take it on with Android. Microsoft trying to take it on with Windows Phone. Why don't they just merge and work together? They never did, right? What happened is there wasn't space for three companies. Android won out. Microsoft's mobile ventures died out. And, even Microsoft's most recent phone that was a phone ran Android, right? That's the future that we eventually got to. But as I always say, there are other markets where there can be multiple competitors, right? In tablets, there is iPad, there is Android, and then there is Fire tablets. And yes, they're a fork of Android, but so is Horizon OS, right? People that focus so much on, underneath it's Android in the core, it doesn't matter. What matters is what the user sees on a platform level. What account do they log in? What store do they use? What content ecosystem are they within? So you do have, in tablets, three competitors. In TVs, you have Fire TV, you have Android TV, you have Roku, you have Apple TV, and you have even others like LG has its own WebOS. So there are markets where you can have a bunch of different players that exist. In the console market, you could argue there's kind of three, kind of two, right? You've got Xbox and PlayStation, and then you have Nintendo, but it's kind of a slightly separate market there. You could argue, had Nintendo kept trying to just compete with the big two, would they have died out? Would there be space for three? It is. We talk about it like that it being inevitable that there only can be Apple and one competitor, but that's only the case for the smartphone market. The other markets show that there is space for that. I would say the PC market is an example where there's only space for two, right? You have Windows and Mac. But other than the smartphone and PC market, there's evidence that others could have three players. It's just, will this market be like that? We don't know. We'll have to see how much does the compounding content of each store matter in the long term and the advantages of ecosystem integration.
People are talking about Google and whether they're going to stick around this time. And I just want to make that case that even if the operating system isn't a success, their services still could be, because they've got incredible services to bring to bear for VR. People, still stung by Stadia and I'm not going to even try to pronounce it right. I don't know how to pronounce it right. Cheese saying Meta and Microsoft will team up. They are already teaming up in major ways. The question is, how far do they take that partnership, and do they ever compete as well, in addition to being partners? CJ7, David just poked the Linux bears. There are a lot of beautiful things happening in Linux out there all over the world. Let's see. We've also got Nintendo to think about coming with Switch 2. I want to throw out this. I'm going to derail us one last time here on this show before we close out. I have an Analog Pocket, and I just got the Mod Retro handheld. So these are a pair of handhelds, both very, very cool devices, and you can put in Game Boy cartridges from the 1990s in either of these things. And last night I had a link cable running between the Analog Pocket and the Mod Retro, and I had a Tetris game running on both of them, and it worked. Here's emulated hardware 35 years later, running between these two devices. Analog Pocket was a cool device, but now the Mod Retro, it has this feature on it that I did not know when I bought it. It was there. It has a USB-C out port on it. It takes AAA batteries, 3 AAA batteries. So you put 3 AAA batteries in the thing, just like you did on the original Game Boy from 1980s, and you're good to go for many hours straight off of AA batteries. But the reason I'm belaboring this is there is video out from that USB-C port. And so I could take the USB-C port, put it in my headset, and I tried this already. HDMI link sees the port, but it doesn't format it right. I have every expectation that in 2025 this will get fixed, and I will be able to play Game Boy games from the Mod Retro in my hand, with all the buttons right here on a nice big display right here. The Analog Pocket doesn't do that. The Analog Pocket sends everything out through a dock in order to get the stuff out of the Analog Pocket from it. I bring up these things because it's the oldest portable personal computer I could ever own. My Game Boy now is being reborn inside VR. And it's kind of the story of all of this, right? We want our Steam Deck inside VR. We want Tomb Raider from 1996 inside VR flat, and we want to be able to play it in mixed reality. It's all coming full circle. We're getting to play all of it.
Yeah, I think you bring up mixed reality there, and that's something we should really point out too when we talk about 2025. Thomas Ireland saying that we're entering the second evolution of VR, mixed reality hardware. And so, yeah, I do think one thing we're going to see in 2025 is a compounding of what we've already seen happen throughout 2024, which is that a higher and higher percentage of usage of these headsets is going to be in mixed reality with pass-through as a background, and a greater focus on content. A lot of the studios that have been building VR games for years are going to come out with mixed reality games. We've only really just seen the first handful of full mixed reality games, right? We talked about Starship Home when it came out as being the first full mixed reality game. We expect to see a big, big change in that in 2025, where big studios with big budgets come out with games that only run on Quest 3S and Quest 3. They don't run on Quest 2. They're designed to take advantage of the scene mesh in your room and use mixed reality. And over time, it'll be interesting to see how much of the content is mixed reality. When do we see a mixed reality game in the top selling for weeks on end? When do we see a mixed reality game in the most used right now list on the Quest store? That'll be very, very fascinating to see over time, because right now, the main usage of these headsets is still virtual reality.
Am I still here? Yeah,
Yep.
I think what happens is there's some kind of a delay between us. Sometimes you get backed up for me, and it has to catch up everything you're doing. I love our discussion today. Yeah, and that we've already had a couple years of Gorilla Tag clones at this point. I think
we just lost Ian again. I think it's just internet connection issues of some sort there. I'll bring the camera back on to me there. Yeah, we have people saying 2024 was the year of Gorilla Tag clones, and 2025 will be the year of Gorilla Tag clones. I think that is something very, very likely. We have Ian back.
Yeah, we'll see how long this lasts. I don't know why I keep getting disconnected there.
It's just internet problems of some sort.
Yeah, I've wired up every device in my home in order to avoid this. Now I have something like 15 to 20 Ethernet cords running to every device in order to try to stop the disconnections happening on wireless. Oh man, yeah, and I'm fun stuff. All right, well, we're getting close to the end of the show. Make sure you tune in to our awards as Don Hopper and I run through some of the awards and all of the recognition we're trying to give out there. We were just talking about this, but we have decided to recognize mixed reality and hand tracking as their own categories this year, uh, independent of one another, right? There's like early access of both, there's full releases of both, there's apps of both, there's games of both. And so we've got a bunch of awards to announce for some of our favorite games this year. Not suspicious. Yeah. Tune into that. I would love to hear from you. When we publish that article tomorrow, we'll cover our favorite developer and best games of the year. And thank you for your support throughout this year. Thank you for these discussions. I look forward to these chats with you, our audience, and with David every week. And we know that they're a big part of your day as well. So it means a lot to see so many regular people out there. We'd love to see you in 2025 as well. David, anything you want to say before we close out?
I guess I'll just answer one question we have here from SD asking, do you think Meta will shift away from hardware if third parties start producing cheaper headsets? So, as I said earlier in the show, I think we're going to see the opposite. Third parties are going to produce the high-end headsets, the $1,000, $1,200, $1,500, $2,000 options, while Meta will continue to sell the cheap options. So for your entry point to the Horizon OS ecosystem, you will still get a first-party MetaQuest headset. And then if you want to upgrade to something better or you want to get a higher quality apologies, experience from the start, that is when you will go with a partner headset. And the reason for that is simply that Meta doesn't sell hardware to make a profit, right? That we think that they sell Quest 3 and Quest 3S at roughly how much it costs to make them, perhaps in some cases even less than it costs to make them. But if you're another company, a hardware company, you're doing the opposite. You don't want to build an ecosystem. You want to sell as many units as possible or sell with a large margin. So your focus is on making a profit on the hardware, and that isn't really compatible with low-cost hardware. So that's why we expect the dynamic to be in the Horizon OS partner headsets.
Sorry, I pulled out my earphones as you were looking at me, David. So I think you were transitioning to me. I think so. I got to mention what the bug is. So you disappear first, your audio continues, and then I get a disconnect.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it's happened 3 or 4 times.
That's just the internet cutting out, right? It's you're missing packets, and then
it happens in that order, though. Like,
sure.
I guess I don't know why it happens in that order.
I don't know. I mean, I would disappear if you're not getting any packet from me. You won't. This avatar won't be animated after a while. If you haven't got a packet from me from the last 2 seconds, it'll assume I've disconnected. But it's the opposite, right? It's that you're not getting the connection on that side.
But I'm still getting some of your voice for a few seconds past your avatar disappearing, and I don't know. That's whatever. And yes, it probably is Wi-Fi interference. The thing is, I've got 3 base stations in this house in order to distribute the Wi-Fi and try to avoid any of the wall issues. I don't know. We'll figure it out. I need, what was it? Bad VR had some visualization in VR tools. I need that tool. Someone out there in the comments, please build for me a Wi-Fi diagnosis tool that uses your room meshing and lets you see what happens when you move objects around your room, see if it improves any of the Wi-Fi signal for you. That's what I need desperately.
Are these mesh? This is a mesh network, right?
Yeah.
Are they wired together?
So 2 are, 1 isn't.
I mean, to be honest, for some cases, I find mesh networks more hassle than they're worth. And unless your apartment is huge, mesh networks are great if you have a big home in the countryside. If you have a typical apartment, just have one well-placed, high-end router in the middle of the apartment, and it should be fine.
I would agree with you, but I've never lived in a building like this. Like, so I've lived in 3 or 4 different houses since I've worked for UploadVR, and each one has a different like quirk. This one, the walls are real walls, like they're thick, real material building, blocking the walls. And yeah, so I run one cord from one base station to the other. The thing that kills me here is I even have an Ethernet cord sitting in the middle of my floor that I could run to this headset just for this
Well, I mean,
scenario, and I have
I
it in the other room.
sure.
But
I don't think it's likely that it's like the wireless between the base station itself and your headset. It seems more it's something to do with getting from the original router one, the relaying it's doing. Sometimes I don't know. I find mesh networks can be more hassle than they're worth. I mean, do you use Powerline? Is that a thing in America where you can put
I
Ethernet
haven't
through?
been using. I've never used Powerline.
You should
It is
try
a
that,
thing, but
and then to get your third one wired up.
mm, yeah. Well, that is a good note to leave it off on. Because this is going to happen more, right? I'm at the cutting edge, and you're going to see it next year as you virtualize displays. As more of your screens come into the headset, you now notice your Wi-Fi issues popping up more often. So everyone needs to go upgrade their Wi-Fi routers. Not complain to Guy Godin. It's not his fault. It's your Wi-Fi router's fault. All right. I think that's it for us. We'll see you in the future, David. Thank you so much for the incredible work this year. We'll see you all. Please become a member or a patron and support our work.
Thanks so much, everyone. We hope you've had a great year. We hope you have a great 2025. Merry Christmas or whatever other holiday you celebrate, and Happy New Year. Thanks, everyone.
Merry Christmas to those who celebrate. See ya.